Hello, everybody, and welcome to Crushing Comics Live, because guess what? You are having a crisis. This crisis live from New Zealand here on a beautiful Monday morning here in New Zealand, but it's Sunday afternoon for you. Many of you getting ready for a big kickoff. Go Birds. You know, you can take the person out of Philadelphia, but you cannot take the Eagles, Eagles, out of the person. So even though I don't watch football anymore, I am still incredibly interested in Eagles winning, really for no reason whatsoever, just because it's like in my genetic code. So hello and welcome to Crushing Comics Live. What do we do? What is this about? Well, I have read over 40 of the comics from last week, and even comics I didn't read, I still managed to have some kind of an opinion on. So we're going to talk about those. But you know what? I probably should pause 1 second. Can you actually see me? Because last week I started talking and there was no video. So can I get some kind of positive comment that diddly doop, Wayne's World styles, that anyone can see me? Yes. Okay. So let me just remind you what we do. I say hello to everybody. We do a little bit of Ask Me Anything. Could be comics, could be New Zealand, could be food, could be why I don't watch football anymore. Then I will count down my, before we count down, then we do a moment of crisis. And I have some things to say about indie comic books today. Indie. Then we're going to look at my top 10 books of 2025 so far. And guess what? It has been some big changes this week. Kind of, sort of. I mean, some changes, a moderate amount of changes. Don't let me overhype it. And then we're going to go through the pull list. And I have there are a lot of very complex things to talk about today. So I really had to rehearse, and then I didn't. So I'll just say whatever I say when we get there. First, I'm going to go ahead and say hello to some of our wonderful folks in the stream. Neil Pereira, I got to say hi to before we even started. So hopefully, Neil, you are still around. I really look forward to you. Looking forward to my thoughts. Let's see who else. Kenneth Crayley Jr., one of the biggest super fans of Superman and the super family on the planet, saying, hey, oh, crisis. A fifth of Jack Gaming. Oh, snap, I'm coming in like a wrecking ball. Like a wrecking ball. Or is it a cannonball? Different song. That one's by the Breeders. Whatever it is. Hello. James Abel is ready for some music and probably some comics, if I know James Abel at all. Reaper XC asking about my swim. I decided no swim on Mondays for now because I'm frantic enough trying to make the hair look like it's supposed to look. So swims Mondays, no swim day, and swims begin on Tuesday. But I'll talk a little bit about my week too. I think it's nice. It humanizes me. It's how you know that I'm not just AI, really, because you would wonder if this would have to be AI generated. Javier Hernandez saying, hey, y'all. RemXO saying, hey, everyone. George Chimchamov, Showtime. Logan Wayne, hello, Crisis, and everyone in the chat. Jarn Powell's happy National Pizza Day, apparently. In what nation? I don't know if that's effective here in New Zealand. I have my doubts. Hank saying, hey, all looking forward to today's stream. Let's see. Ryan Bragg saying, hey, everybody. Matt Houck, I got to say hi to you on your mid-condition stream last Thursday, and I'm saying hello to you again today. I'm having a great day so far, but it's only 10 o'clock, so there's a lot of room for it to go in any direction. Chris Brogan saying hello. Kia ora to Samantha Jane, my fellow Kiwi. Yes, my good friend Max Appleman, who has a new Beatles Bop, Crisis-approved Beatles Bop up on his channel, and he's an admin, so he can put the URL of it in the chat all by himself if he wants to. The guitar does have all the strings. That's why I was 5 minutes late. I was restringing and changing the battery of the tuner. Okay, and I think I've said hello to all of the unique... Oh, I learned how to say Edwin's name correctly because we were corresponding via email. You can send me an email on my contact form on my site if you want to explain how to say your name. So Edwin, it's Billiot. Billiot. I'm going to say it so much today because I now know how to say it. Looking good and sounding good. Thank you so much, Edwin. And Samantha says she's going to listen to me on her run. She inspired me to listen to some Near Mint Condition on one of my runs last week. And all of a sudden, I'm running all the time because you know what? I run the best when I'm angry. And sometimes omnibus announcements can help with anger. But we'll get into that. Okay, I think, wait, there's a couple of people I haven't seen yet. Super Panda saying hello, everyone. Adam S. Messenger saying hello. Should I just say messenger, like don't shoot the messenger? I'm sorry, you've probably heard that a lot. I'm very sensitive to name puns because I got a lot of name puns. But is it just messenger? Like, do I have to really set the I? In New Zealand, I don't have a New Zealand accent at all. I don't think. I probably have a weird accent too because I've just been here for years, so I don't even know how I talk anymore. But I know it's not a New Zealand accent. And in New Zealand, all vowels migrate towards I. So when they say deck, like the person who owns this house has to work on the deck today, you will get a message that's like, I'm going to be on the dick. And then you get really confused. Stephen Patterson, fly, eagles fly. Okay. And Jean-Remy Argueta, still at work, but currently on a break, which is how we usually start the show for you. The name changes, saying, hola, Rising Phoenix Railroad, thinking about traveling to Australia and New Zealand in a year or two. How much time? You know, I live here, but I've heard a lot of people say you need a proper 2 weeks to do enough of New Zealand to really make all the flying worth it if you're coming anywhere other than Australia or nearby Asia. And I think you could spend those 2 weeks easily in the North Island. I think you could do a high quality North Island tour in like seven or 8 days. I think you could really see a lot of the good stuff, unless you're somebody that wants to go on like multi-day hikes. But I've never been to South Island, actually, so I cannot comment upon that. And then I am no Jedi saying, LOL. Okay, I think I've greeted all of the unique human beings that are here so far. So I guess this means we're going to do my moment of crisis. And then you could start accumulating questions, and I'll bookmark where we were in the chat. And then I'll go back and do some questions afterwards, because last week we did the questions before the top 10 and everybody said that felt more natural. So we're going to try, because everything about this is very natural today. So that's what we're going to try. Okay. So that means I get to put on my lovely banner. Oh, first, there's a banner that comes first. CrushingKrisis.com. If you only know me from YouTube, I have a website, CrushingKrisis.com. It's been around for very close to 25 years. The comic stuff has been around for very close to 15 years. And all those guides get updated every week when I read new releases in order to do the show. You see, it's a cycle. It's a process. It's the circle of life. So if I talked about a book today and you're like, I've always wanted to dive into that character recently, or I don't know what order the trades go into, or I don't know when their first issue was. If they're a Marvel character, it's on Crushing Krisis. If it's a DC character, 60-40, it's on Crushing Krisis. If it's indie, probably not yet, but I'm working on it because I really like the idea of having more indie guides. And that is powered by patreon.com/crisis. You can chip in $1 or $2 a month and have access to all the guides. And it's really helpful to me. So a couple of people chipped in last week. It was nice. It was nice because I had some Crushing Krisis related expenses last week. And it was nice to know that people are helping me with that. Because guess what? This stuff is not cheap. It's not cheap. I understand why people just do YouTube now. I know I say that a lot. It's going to be my thing that I say, but I totally get it because YouTube, you pay $35 for StreamYard, which I will not pay. So that's why that little duck is in, I think it's in that corner for you. Because that's a lot of, that's like as much as some of my hosting per month. And then you're golden, really. But with a website, you need the hosting, the domain names, the WordPress helper apps, the extra RAM, the Cloudflare, it adds up, but I love it. I was talking to my friends this weekend from college, who I play D&D with every other week. And they're saying, you know, a lot of them are IT people who've done this kind of stuff professionally for decades now. And they're like, yeah, but you're the one who's had the website for 25 years. And we've always thought that was pretty cool. So that's what I do. Okay. Now we're going to do a moment of crisis. Today, the moment of crisis is about the word indie, short for independent. Now, I love indie things because we need to sometimes see something other than what comes down from the man. So I like indie music. I like indie films. Not really such a thing as indie TV, but YouTube kind of turned into that. And of course, indie comics. Now, one of the big debates that tends to come up is sometimes when you have an Image comic, I'm trying to see if I have any recent Image comics here. We'll just pick the one that everybody knows, Saga, right? So somebody might say, I love indie comics like Saga. And you're like, well, honey, indie? Saga is one of the biggest comics of the 2010s. Image is the number 3 in the big 3 publishers. Can you really even call Image indie? And for that matter, what is even an indie comic? Well, I think about this a lot because every time I say indie, a near mint condition, and then I follow up by saying Image, I get castigated in the comments about like, they're not indie. They have G.I. Joe now, which that might be some of you. I don't know. I don't see the person I'm thinking of, but they'll be here eventually. And here's the thing. I come from a long, long time ago, a land long, long lost to today. That's called the 1980s. And in the 1980s, it really was the Marvel and DC show at a comic book store. And everything else was indie. Even the biggest anything of anything else was effectively indie. And then when Image came along in 1992, it wasn't just Image. It was Image, it was Malibu, it was Valiant. There was this big boom of people who were not the big two. And of course, non-big two comics existed before that. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles came from somewhere. Miracle Man came from somewhere. But primarily the market was Marvel and DC if you were just the average comic book reader trying to buy some comic books. And then, of course, like Archie. And so that's why we call Image indie, because it was posed as as an indie. Oh, I've been watching too much Severance. It was posed as indie because those people left Marvel specifically to create Image. But now, 30 plus years later, Image is a huge player. So can we still call them indie? Well, here's where I come down on that. Marvel and DC are not just the two biggest comic brands anymore. They're two brands that are part of two of the biggest companies in the world. Marvel is owned by Disney. DC is owned by WB. They're not just licensing their properties. They are wholly owned by those companies. You can't get any bigger than that. They're two of the biggest entertainment companies in the world. Image, although very solid and certainly not going anywhere, is still basically a flotilla of individuals lashed together with their own publishing lines. And for a long time, that was just the publishing lines of the original Image folks. And then Liefeld jumped ship, and then Jim Lee jumped ship to DC and brought Wildstorm with him. And Jim Valentino wasn't really doing anything with Shadowline that often. Eric Larson was mostly just doing Savage Dragon on his line. And so we were really down to Todd McFarlane, who was just doing Spawn. And we were down to like Top Cow. That was it. But then Walking Dead and Invincible came along. Robert Kirkman wound up having his own line, Skybound. Now, recently, in the past couple of years, there's all sorts of new lines at Image. There's Giant Generator, which is Rick Remender's line. There is Ghost Machine, which is Geoff John's line. And there's a lot of other sublines too. So Image, to me, still is very indie. They're not backed by a giant corporate behemoth who will make sure that they will always exist and use their IP to the best possible, right? It's not just that Marvel and DC are subsidized by their big corporate overlords, and there's a lot of debate whether they are or they aren't. I mean, they have to make money on their own to survive, but they have those huge companies to exploit the IP, flog it. They have whole departments of lawyers and IP people licensing it out to t-shirts, working on brand deals, getting them placements places. Image has to do that on its own. To me, that's why it's indie. And there's a lot of indies out there, but sometimes indies have licenses. So is IDW an indie? Absolutely yes. They just had huge layoffs in the last week. They might not survive the year at this point. Just because they have some licenses like Ninja Turtles does not mean they're not an indie. The same is true for Boom. The same is true for Dark Horse. And many of these comic book companies are in trouble right now, or at least really shifting their model. People have been saying, where are all the Vault comics single issues recently? Is because Vault decided that they are going to sell direct to consumer. And so they actually had to kind of pause all of their solicits, and all of them got delayed. But to a person walking into a comic shop, Vault just looks like another indie that went under. But there's plenty of indies. There's ones that we talk about here on the show, and I really do try to capture all of the single issue floppies that are hitting in any given week. We started talking a lot about Mad Cave. There's Blood Moon Comics, who have been launching some really strange and crazy stuff, some of which I really like. And then there's those folks that are just putting out 1 or 2 books. They're all indies. And to me, they all exist on that same spectrum where, yes, Image is the biggest fish. It's the whale, but all of those are part of the indie universe. And that's how we have a vibrant world of comics. That's where new trends begin. That's where new creators come up. That's where we see things that are going to be a little bit more transgressive and break the rules, because breaking rules books and Marvel and DC tend to be few and far between. So yes, I will continue to call Image an indie, even when we are talking about Saga, one of the top selling comic books of the last 15 years. Why? Because Image is doing it independently from all of that infrastructure that comes with Marvel and DC. And I think Image, by virtue of finally re-expanding all of the individual lines that creators have there, is really recapturing the spirit of what Image was to begin with. Let's have a creator come here who doesn't necessarily want all of the overhead of creating their own publishing house, but who has the ideas, who has the drive, who wants to have a shared universe, and let's give them a way to publish their books. Just because it's a big flotilla of them lashed together does not make each one of them any less independent. So yes, I will still call Image indie, even though Skybound has the G.I. Joe license. I think you could argue that if Skybound spun off from Image to be its own company between Walking Dead, Invincible, and the G.I. Joe Transformers license, maybe Skybound wouldn't be indie anymore, but they're part of the Image flotilla. So those are just a few thoughts on what is indie to me. But then, you know what? There's some things that are totally indie. This book, The Pride, which I believe was actually, no, this is the Kickstarter edition. So it is number 418 of 500. This was later, I believe, published by Dark Horse, but I have it direct from the creator, Joe Glass, who I've been very privileged to be on a near mint condition stream with in the past year. And this is indie as it gets. It's on Kickstarter. And when Joe wants to make a new comic, Joe starts a new Kickstarter. And indie extends all the way down to there. And I wish I could be on every Kickstarter, pledging for every comic. And who knows, if you make this show wildly, wildly popular, if we're getting thousands upon thousands of streams every week and people are demanding it, you know what? We will have a Kickstarter segment. But let's just get good at the basics for now. And part of those basics is this is not just about Marvel and DC. This is about indie books too. Let's see what you've been talking about in the comments, and then we will get to our top 10. Larry's Library making his entrance. I have a non-company owned stuff separated from the rest. The rest I group as indie creator owned. My criteria is if the creator owns IP character book, then it is indie and creator owned. Kristen says, that's his daughter, I'm wrong. And indie doesn't just mean creator owned. Size of publisher plays some role, I guess, according to some. And the other thing is, some of these books that we think of as creator owned at certain indies, they are not really creator owned. They are creator participating. Some companies that we think of indies, you have to give them a significant amount of the rights to your work before they will even publish the work. And that differs from publisher to publisher, and also differs from creator to creator, depending on what kind of contract they've negotiated. So that's even a weird way to try to qualify indie, because you might be reading some things from Boom that you know to be creator owned, and I have too. And then you might be reading some things from Boom that you think are creator owned, but actually Boom has a significant stake in. Okay. Reaper, white Australian culture is just casual racism. Give us a miss for culture. I don't know what I started to talk about with Australian culture, but Reaper came in hot about that one. I guess we're kind of in the comments on the Moment of Krisis and also the AMA period. So if there's questions, I'll answer them. Edwin Billiot, so nice, I'm going to say it 3 times, Billiot, said, my Wonder Woman guide is excellent. You know, and that's what I'm a little sensitive about, because it used to be so great. I mean, she is my hair inspiration. This is Wonder Woman hair. This is like the Super Friends Kenner toy Wonder Woman hair from 1984. But that was my first DC guide ever, and I feel like I haven't given it a super lot of love lately. It is up to date, but I know I could do a little bit better on it, but I'm just so dispirited by that Tom King run. But I'm so happy you find it helpful. I just added a bunch of Nubia stuff to it in the last week. Reaper, plugging my Patreon, I really, really appreciate it. You know, I sometimes go dark for a couple months a year, but the thing is, all of that access on Crushing Krisis continues, even if I'm off having a nap or swimming or working or whatever it is that I do. Ryan says, just pay for the year, support the channel. Look, everybody's got their own budget right now. I have slashed things that I always thought, oh, I'll be able to afford that couple of bucks. No. So I totally get it. There is no wallet shaming here. If you cannot go in at $1 or $2 over the year, if you only can afford to give me your intention, that is something I still very much value. But it is so, it really gives me the warm tinglies to see people in the chat saying that they have joined the Patreon and used the site. Oh my goodness. Logan, you don't have to pay to stream. Like, you can just do this thing that I'm doing totally for free. But if you want like more advanced tools, like if I want to have an intro like Omni Dog, just brag, I have to pay to have tools that are more sophisticated. I'd have to pay if I wanted to stream in higher definition. There are some free tools, but then that doesn't come with all this sexy comment highlighting and stuff. So just like anything else, helper apps help make the experience great, and sometimes helper apps cost a lot of money. Okay. James Abel says indie is short for Indianapolis. True. And how many comics publishers are based out of Indianapolis? I don't know. Max Appleman says, I think the closest thing to indie TV was public access. Again, Just Bragg used to have a public access show. Adam S. Messenger says, I say Dark Horse and Image are great for creator-owned stuff, but not necessarily independent. Well, Dark Horse is owned by this group. Are they the one that are owned by the Embracer group? And Dark Horse just had layoffs last week too. I think the difference is being owned by a big corporate group who just owns you to want to profit off of your IP, and being owned by a house that understands how to profit from your IP and has the mechanisms for profit internal to it. That to me is currently why I think of Marvel and DC as on a separate echelon. Kane checking in from, I believe, the East Coast, just a little bit later than everybody else. Good evening to Kane, or early evening or morning if you're in New Zealand. But Bungmaster Beyond Comics does not consider Image Comics to be Indianapolis, and he stands firm on that. Harvey Picar's Ghost, who may have been the person who inspired that Moment of Krisis. Hello, Harvey Picar's Ghost. Indie is a word with a definition you can look up, no reason or need to discuss, and that is why we had a Moment of Krisis today. Severance is so good. I'm so happy it's finally back. Bungmaster, we can't turn this into TV chat because I am. If you think I'm brutal about comics, about X-Men comics, you don't even know the brutal I am on TV because I don't watch a lot of TV. So it's got to be pumping like the best possible thing. I may have rage quit Severance this weekend. That was too losty for me. That was a shark jump, but it's not a TV show. Severance is a TV show. This, come on, Vogue. This show is not a TV show, but Max is binge waiting. I do better when I binge wait TV because I'm not really good with the expectation of what I want a show to be and then waiting week to week to see if it violates my expectation or not, which also applies to comics, as we will discover in some of the discussion today. Oh, Kenneth Crayley says, Dark Horse Comics was the first indie publisher I got comics from, mostly Star Wars in the early 90s. I'm trying to think if Image truly would have been my first indie, because that was only 2 years into me collecting. So I probably was not like looking at previews catalogs until Image Solicit started coming out. Because I remember Wildcats 1 and 2 were already out before I like caught on. So I think Image probably was my first indie. I didn't have a lot of Dark Horse. You know what I did? Do you remember when Dark Horse did what was it called? It was like the superhero something. They did the 16 weeks of 4 different cities and there are 4 number ones and 1 in each city, but they were super cheap. They were like 25 cents. That's where X came from, Ghost, Barbed Wire. And then the ones, it was like a pilot season. The ones that did the best kept going. I bought a ton of those. Somewhere I have the omnibus of all those number ones, but I would love to go back and just buy all the series that stemmed from that. So that was probably the first Dark Horse. Kane saying she still needs the Pride omnibus. Joe Glass is a really cool dude, y'all. And he does novels now. His novels are definitely very specifically queer, which is not to say that if you're not queer or you're thinking about being queer, that you shouldn't read them. But I think his comic books are just comic books that he'll always have queer themes, and bless him for doing that. I think the books are a little bit more specifically queer fiction. But that's just me. And I love to support Joe, and he is a high quality human being in my experience. Matt Hawk saying, one time I saw Indy overcome his fear of snakes, outrun a boulder, and defeat an evil cult. Try that, Image Comics. Vault also pivoted to light novels, says Adam S. Messenger. And Vault has a cool aesthetic. I don't always love the things they do editorially, but it's a vibe. It's a very specific vibe, which I know I don't love, but it doesn't mean they're bad. It means, wow, they have enough of identity that I can say I don't love that identity, which is actually pretty cool if you think about it. Kane says IDW has Sonic the Hedgehog as well. My friend would be upset if IDW went under. Well, fingers crossed. Yeah, they're all hurting. Dark Horse is hurting. Bunkmaster thinks flotilla is a really fun word. That's because we dealt with a flotilla in my D&D campaign this weekend, so it's just on my brain. And Harvey Picar hates my take, but you know what we say here in the biz when you have really giant lips? We say this because it's my show and not yours. That's an reference for those of you who don't watch Trixie and Katya content. Okay. I am now going to see if some people are asking any questions, because technically this is the AMA. Should I put up the banner? Let's put up the banner. Why not? Were my curtains expensive? So I have this curtain up here, which I got from Target in like 2009, which I won't pull down because everything will collapse. That's the backdrop you sometimes see me on. That's like pink with all the swirlies. And that was super cheap. But getting something that big in New Zealand has proven really, really hard because it's just not as much of a thing to just get a tapestry that's the size of this whole Calyx shelf. So yeah, now they're expensive, which is why I just appear on a backdrop of books. But then also in New Zealand, the sun is so strong that you not only want like blackout style curtains if you want a room to be dark, like a bedroom sometimes, but also because the sun will just straight up bleach everything in your room, not just like books, but like the couch, your desk, the guitar, everything. Like the sun here is so powerful. So curtains here are really expensive, but that's because they're really thick. I actually just got new ones. Oh gosh, please don't mess everything up. That are really, really cool and fancy. So cool. I almost got another set to put behind me, but they're like really, really light tight. I'm not going to fully unfold them because this will turn into a disaster, but I still have to hang them. But I really, sometimes I might hang them and point the whole show that way because I think they're so cool. Okay. Yes, Severance. This episode of Severance was a very, very different Severance. I think it was a turning point episode. I don't want to spoil it. And it's not a TV show. It was one of those episodes that's like, this is what the show is really about. So I'm giving it some rope. Because I'm like, okay, well, it's just the big revelation, right? This is the big kind of reveal of like, this is a direction we're going in. So I can't just get my panties in a twist. Just because of that. World's Greatest Heroes. Yes, Adam Messenger. That was the Dark Horse line of comics I was thinking of. Thank you very much. Ryan Wilson says, do I do drag? I saw my website and was wondering, does my dad and his husband do a bunch of shows? I love drag. I've always loved drag. Even before there was Drag Race, I loved drag in 1993. I was obsessed with RuPaul when she first started being on television more often. I loved Priscilla, Queen of the Desert. And, you know, when I was, here's some deep crisis lore. When I was a kid, and there was no like shame attached to just like, why not get dressed up like a girl for something? Like I would always get dressed up as like Wonder Woman or Gem or anything. And I don't think that necessarily has to do anything with your gender identity. I think there can be boys, cis boys, who just like dressing up as girls sometimes. And a lot of drag queens actually are cis. They do not think of themselves as non-binary or trans or anywhere under that umbrella. And so I still think it's fun to dress up like a girl or a feminine presenting character. But then it turns out I am a feminine presenting character some of the time. Who knew? So I would love to do drag. I'm always pushing the show makeup a little bit more towards drag. Sometimes it goes a little over the top, but it's my chance to like practice something and see what it looks like in motion instead of just seeing a picture. I've definitely done some crazy stuff for Jess's show sometimes because I know I'm going to a little tiny postage stamp size video. I would like to one day this year, eventually will get me in full drag. The gluing down of the eyebrows is really, really menacing to me. It really, really scares me. And then just eye makeup in general. I'm not really good with fine lines. I'm not an artist. I don't draw well. So these little white lines that I do, tangled, under my eyes are like, that's as fancy as it gets over here. So the drag looks, especially the current drag looks with the really like snatched back long eyeliner, that really scares me. But you got to practice to get there. The reason I'm like semi decent at this now is because we had that week that I was streaming all week earlier this month, and I like just got really good at like whipping out this one thing that I like to look like, and it's like, yeah, practice truly does make perfect. Okay, Logan Wayne's got to ask, what do you think of the latest Krakoa Omnibus announcement? And was the Dugan's Krakoa run good? If you haven't seen Near Mint Condition today, run to that channel. 2 really big Omnibus announcements in one video. One of them is that 3 weeks out on the heels of the Dawn of X Omnibus, they also announced a Jerry Dugan X-Men Omnibus that is going to collect all of his 2021 run, Hellfire Gala, Planet X-Men, and not too much else. His 2 issues of X-Men Green that got printed from the digital comment. I think that's a stupid omnibus. I think it doesn't make any sense. It's not that fun to read by itself. You're really going to be missing a lot by missing out on having Judgment Day collected with it, missing out on having the Fall of X stuff collected with it. I think it should have on his Uncanny Avengers 5-issue series in there for more context. And I just don't, even the beginning of that, which set the stage for all the Orca stuff, was so tied into what was happening in Immortal X-Men. I just am surprised they went with him next. I would have thought Ewan or Gillian would have come next. That said, I have no insider information, pure gamble. I think the next one that we're going to see is X-Men by Ewing, which will have Sword and X-Men Red. I think we're going to see X-Men by Gillen that has Immortal. And then I think we're going to see X-Force by Percy because it's the perfect omnibus size. Those are my guesses. Reaper, host that I'd be last long enough to publish TMT Volume 18. I think TMT is such a big license and it's such a big moneymaker for Nickelodeon that even if they took it somewhere else, they would just continue all the same collections and keep it really standardized. Bunkmaster, speaking of queer comics, did you ever read Sins of the Black Flamingo? No, I've never even heard of that. I will have to come back and make a note of that when I reread all of these comments. All right, we got to wind up here and get to the rest of the show. Did I try TMNT versus Naruto issues coming out? No. I already know TMNT as an IP, so I think last week finally caught up to all the current TMNT. I don't know if I'm going to read TMT Masters of the Universe, TMT Naruto, because I don't necessarily have affection for all those, and I am a whore for shared universes. So if they're not in the Turtle shared universe, I don't care quite as much, but I might sample them. I generally am down to sample any new number one. So as new number ones come down the pike, I will probably sample them next. Imagine not hello. I don't think I've said hello to you yet today. Would I happen to have any specific recommendations or blackout curtains? I mean, the New Zealand brands they're so totally different. I think the thing is, you shouldn't be going to some like high-endy store for that necessarily. You should be going to a place like check out like a Joanne Fabrics or like that kind of store. That's where a lot of the curtains are here. And even if they don't, they're going to have, that's the kind of place that has curtains, not like a Target or a Walmart. They're just going to have their house brand. And also, even if you can't find the curtains there, you might see some really cool fabric that would work as curtains. That's the only suggestion I could give. Tu Wong Fu, thanks for everything. Julie Newmar, Max Appleman points out another movie that's a drag movie. That's a movie I like very much. Concrete by Paul Chadwick is pretty good. I love that book. I've only ever read an issue or two. It's on my very long list of things that I want to catch up upon. Larry's Library said, hot or cold tea or both? I dislike almost all hot things you can ingest, other than like a nice warm, like a pho or like a tofu katsu, like in a soup and a broth. Otherwise, I like everything cold. I like pizza cold. I like tea cold. I pretty much like all food better as leftovers, which I just thought I was a weirdo. Now that I understand neurodivergence better, I'm like, oh, maybe that's a neurodivergent thing. Who knew? I hope I didn't miss any questions. I'm really, really trying to catch everything. Stephen Patterson, hello to you. Never read an indie. Never. Wow. Well, what would I recommend to a new reader? Personally, I would start with something that's like really big and universally beloved, because not to pick something easy, but because then you can get a sense for if you like it and how you feel about the way people talk about it. I think Saga is a great place to start. I think I'm going to be off camera for just a second here. Hold on. I think Murder Falcon or a lot of other Daniel Johnson books, but especially this one. It's still in the wrap because I read it digitally, but I love this book. If you, it's got a really great music component if you're a music fan, but this is indie and it's fantastic. Yeah, I would start with an indie book that's like a juggernaut of indie, or maybe James Tynion book. If you really like horror, maybe try Something Is Killing the Children, or Behind Me Here somewhere, Wind, which is more YA. My recommendation would be to start with something really big and current, not because that's what indie is, but because that gives you a chance to stick a tentpole on the ground, and whether you like it or not, it'll be easier to get recommendations. As much as I like Concrete and the people are recommending Concrete is like an indie juggernaut of the space that a lot of new readers have not read. So if you come out and you say, I loved Concrete, but I'm looking for something more like blah, it's going to be hard for somebody to make a recommendation for you. And then I wouldn't say, I mean, you could also read like Invincible or Walking Dead or something, but they're so big. I think anything over 100 issues becomes like a universe of itself, TMNT, Hellboy, and it becomes its own like world of licensed property. So I would try to start with like one series that's self-contained, that's under 100 issues, so that if you really like it, you can really dig in. And then I would ask other people for recommendations. That would be what I would say to that. Max Appleman says, Dear Krisis, do I think Judgment Day will be collected within the Krakoa Omnis? That's from Matt My X. You can't get a free Matt My X out of me just because I'm here on my own YouTube channel. Hayden says, whatever makes makeup you feel works best for you will look great. It doesn't have to be drag makeup. Do drag adore prove that. Hayden's my fellow Drag Race fan. I have not watched any of season 17 yet. I've been so busy, and also they're all so young. I feel like I'm watching kindergartners do drag. The one of them who's in their 30s, they're calling grandma. I'm like, that's another stream for another time. Chris Brogan says there's no way I would buy the Dugan Omnibus because of what they did to Lara. Well, they kind of sort of repaired it. And it was one of those things that reacting month to month, that pissed me off. And then seeing the whole sweep of it, I think they tied it off in a way that was pleasing. But it was very frustrating as it was happening. Okay. I think I've answered most of the questions that I've seen, except for this one. Last question for now. Actually, I'm coming back to you, Lance. Chris Brogan, Lazarus might be a good one to catch up on. Lazarus is my favorite comic book. Full stop, period. I'm obsessed with it. I love it. I think it's amazing. I think it should be a never-ending TV show. It was optioned by Amazon, and I think they didn't make it. It's dystopian, but it's very, very grounded. It's a world that feels disturbingly close to the world that we're in right now. Could not recommend more strongly. As soon as the next hardcover comes out, I will reread the whole thing, which I do every time a hardcover comes out. It is my favorite comic book. Highly, highly endorsed. Lance, this is the last question I'm going to do for now. Which X-Men character benefited the most from X-Men 97? Cyclops, because that was the first media adaptation I've ever seen that has like gotten what was cool about Cyclops right. I almost could say Gambit, but I think Gambit benefited a lot from Deadpool and Wolverine too. Okay. Wow. Well, you can keep asking things, but I will not get into stuff that is not explicitly about the comics I'm talking about until we get to the end, if there's still time. So I will see your comments after, and I might let them inspire to ask me anything for the following week. But from now on, let's try to sort of focus, because it's been 40 minutes already, and I haven't even started the actual content of the show. God help us. So let me get everything set up over here, all my little bits and boops that happen. Because, oh no, where is the top 10? Here we go. Okay, because we've got a top 10 to cover. So just to let you know what I do here, I keep a spreadsheet, because of course I do, of every single comic I read. And over time, I accumulate ratings for all those comics. and I know which ones I like the most, but not just ratings. I keep a net promoter score of the positive things I liked, the positive issues, the ones that I rated 4, 4.5, and 5 versus the ones that I did not rank very highly. And that lets me know net how much I love a book. So this is not just based on fifis. This is not the top 10 fifis of the year. This is data driven. And then I can do a little bit of fifis at the end if I want to adjust things a little bit. So let me get my other window ready here. And we're going to go over the top 10 because there are some different things in it this week than there were before. All right. Let me just view a single page here. Perfect. Okay. And I'm going to present. I'm going to share screen. We're going to share my entire screen, which, as we know, I also always have nebula backgrounds from NASA. And then we're going to bring it to the stage. Hey, and then I got to get all the way over here so you can see what's going on. Okay. Welcome to me turning off the banner so that we can see the timer. Okay. Let's just give a minute because we got a new number 10, the Rocketfellers from Ghost Machine Family Odysseys. This Peter J. Tomasi book I'm going to be talking about today caught me totally by surprise. It made me so happy I started reading more things from Ghost Machine because it turns out give comics a chance. This is masterful, beautiful, family fun, like indie Fantastic Four, totally in love. Then we've got another new entrant, Ultimates. Y'all, this week's Luke Cage issue was major, and it's going to be at the end of the alphabet of today, so you're going to have to hang in if you want to hear me talk about it at length. And then another new one, GhostBox. I bet you don't even know what this comic is. We're going to be talking about this today. This is from Comixology from Mike Carey. Yes, that Mike Carey, and it is every bit as good as you might think based on his name and that very unusual giant-sized angel on the cover. Then we have Batman Dark Patterns still on the list, The New Gods, Evan Cagle's art, amazing. Can't wait for issue number 3. Absolute Superman ticking down slightly, and I'll talk about why. Doesn't mean I don't still love it. The Nice House by the Sea, as we know, is my entire personality. Dust to Dust, which if you have not read it yet, go back and watch my review from last week because I'm obsessed with this comic book about the Dust Bowl. And then at number 2 with a bullet or a black cat, it's The Avengers from Jed MacKay, which was gorgeous this week. Can't wait to talk about it. And still at number 1, and at least until there's another issue for me to make a decision about, it's FML from Dark Horse Comics by Kelly Sue DeConnick and Company. Okay, I will stop that share. And now it's time that we're going to get down to the pull list, y'all. I'm just going to look at a couple of your more comments. Last chance for more comments before we go into the hardcore. I'm so behind in Drag Race stuff, Hayden says. I need to binge at some point that's spread across different platforms here. Here's a trick. If you subscribe to WoW Presents Plus, then, and you have a cheap VPN, just the cheapest possible VPN that can handle video content, then if you VPN, you'll have everything that's offered in your country, and then you just VPN to another country that has everything else. So if you live outside of the United States and you VPN to the United States, WoW Presents has every Drag Race except for United States Drag Race because none of the rest of them are on broadcast there. That's what they sell WoW Presents on. So for me, I watch all of Drag Race, including US Drag Race, on WoW Presents here in New Zealand, and then I VPN to the United States when I want to watch Drag Race Down Under because that has a broadcaster here. Fun trick. VPN's very helpful. I have one because it's the only way I can use DC Universe because the website still doesn't work in New Zealand, even though I'm allowed to sign up and pay, and the app works, not the website. Rail saying hello. I think last week I mentioned an excellent Krakoa Hour reading order. Can you tell me where to find it? I believe that would be Tyler's reading order. He's not in the comments today. We're maybe going to do a collab to get that going on my website. I cannot say for sure. Definitely getting the 4th Lazarus hardcover. Yeah, I'm getting it. Hank saying, Mind Blown is drinking cold. Oh, Mind Blown is drinking cold and neurodivergent thing. I get made fun of my wife for my cold coffee all the time. ADHD and Tourette's. I feel seen. Hank, I think it is. I think it. I mean, we can have neurodivergent chat maybe some other time. Neurodivergent deep dive. But I always thought that I was just a weirdo, and it was like so weird that I always liked cold drinks, but not like cold pizza, cold everything, cold Chinese food. And then now I'm thinking it might be a neurodivergent thing. Bunkmaster B saying another one to venture into smaller press comics is identifying a writer or artist you like from Marvel and DC and following them to other publishers, which is easier now than ever before because so many people are doing indie. Whenever I see a creator I really like at Marvel DC, I'm like, I want them to make an indie book so I can see what's really in their head and so they can make bank. Right? That hopefully, if it gets licensed or something cool should happen. Yakura says, is an X-Men beginner, which modern Omni should I start with this year? All new X-Men Krakoa, or if you've never read X-Men before, Krakoa is a lot. I mean, it's great. And you should read Hoxpox first, House of X, Powers of X. I think all new X-Men is actually pretty fun, friendly orientation to what X-Men is, and it's all pretty contained. I mean, they don't go home to their own time. Spoilers at the end of that book, but it's still a pretty contained run. So for somebody who just liked the idea of X-Men and wanted to dip a toe into one X-Men book, I think I would maybe say like All New X-Men, or the perennial recommendation is, of course, Whedon's Astonishing X-Men. Then check out House of X, Powers of X. That's what I'm going to go with. Bendis's older crime stuff, Larry's Library really enjoys. Okay, I gotta start. And we'll come back to your questions when I take my first break. Okay, so here's where I go through all of the pull lists from this past week, February 5th. And somewhere in here, I've got a whole PDF of it that I'm going to put on my screen. I have a minute to talk about each book, except for when I don't. Except for when I just, oh no, what did I do? Oh no, this is right. View as single page. Okay, that's what we're talking about. Okay. So I have a minute, except for when I don't, and I don't have a producer, as we have established. So if I go over, no one can stop me. And then every like 5, 6, 10 books, I stop, I check in with the chat. You can ask me any kind of questions that you want, and I will sometimes totally go off and answer things that are totally random questions. But I also like when you have read the books. So if you've read the books and you have things to say about the books, that's super, super cool. I love that. So like feel free to drop in your capsule reviews, and I will absolutely highlight those capsule reviews as best as I can as we are talking. Okay, I'm going to reshare my screen here. Hopefully I did it right. And, okay, let's remember how this works. I turn it a little bit this way, and then I go a little bit this way. Right, okay, let's begin. So I did finish all of my pulls this week, and when I finish all of my pulls, I get to read 2000 AD. Here's the thing I'm learning about 2000 AD. And it's like a whole comic book line that puts out 5 comics a month. And Judge Dredd is the ongoing, and all the other stuff is the miniseries. But the thing is, they're all serialized in this one weekly book. And so if you get to a point where you happen to not like a couple of the serials, it becomes really hard to get excited about reading the whole book. But then if you like all the serials, then it's really a fun time. So this one has Judge Dredd. Oh no, wait. This is last week. Oh no. No, this must be, I'm so confused. Pause. Is this from several weeks ago? I'm so confused. Yeah, this is last week. Okay. Remember how I said I don't have a producer? This is me not having a producer. Here we go. February 5. The one that actually says the date in it is the one that I actually need to open. Imagine that. Okay, that looks so much better. How long would that have happened before I realized? Well, I would have realized because there would have been books that were not from this week. Okay. Let's try that again, shall we? And I started such a good monologue, too, about how it's an indie book. Do I have to repeat that all now when I start the timer? I don't know. Okay, let's try that again, shall we? Well, we're just going to pick up from where we are. So this had a really cool Judge Dredd story with some really neat art from Nick Percival, but I'm not a Judge Dredd super fan, but I enjoyed this. It started a new storyline, and it seems like it's going to be like really getting into a little bit about the lore of the city, which I'm into. This new Full Tilt Boogie story, book 3, part 1 by Alex de Campi. I love Alex de Campi, but I'm like, oh my gosh, book 3, the previous chapters were from like years ago. I don't know. Portals of the Black Goo, which has been ongoing for a while, I really dislike. Hawk the Slayer, which somebody asked a couple weeks ago, is it from the movie? Yes, it is from the movie, and it's actually been really, really cool. I would be buying this if it was a standalone comic book. Fiends of the Western Front, I'm really enjoying. It's a Western book about Oscar Wilde. It has a Mike Mignola kind of thing. Actually, I loved this chapter written by Ian Edgington. So actually, if 2000 AD was its own line of books, this week I would be really into that line of books. There would only be one that I would drop. The other thing is that Alex de Campi story, which I'm like, oh, so long ago. If we were talking about single issues, I could just go back and pick up a couple single issues and be totally up to date on it. But since it's been spread out across all of these 2000 ADs, I would have to go pick up tons of issues of 2000 AD. So I don't know. I'm still going to keep reading 2000 AD for a couple more weeks. And then we're going to see, oh my gosh, we're on to something new. Absolute Superman, Jason Aaron, Rafa Sandoval, Ulysses Arilla, and Becca Carey. So what's really interesting about this book is it's resisting centering Superman. This centers Lois Lane. She's very, very interesting. I think it's a super, super intriguing version of Lois Lane. But if you came to see Absolute Superman flying around, you were not going to get that in this issue. But what I really enjoy about this is that Lois Lane, it's kind of playing with the fact that she is fundamentally the same character. And it's not a Batman or a Wonder Woman or Superman where we're seeing the powers are different or a different vibe. She is absolutely Lois Lane. She just happens to come up through an industry that's not journalism. Instead, she comes up through being one of these peacekeepers. So she's very, very deadly, but that's not that out of character for her because that's the industry her family was in, her father was in, and he is in this issue as well. I thought this was a very thoughtful issue. I thought it was very tense, but I wanted a little bit more Absolute Superman, because with Absolute Superman comes that loving hope core that I love from Jason Aaron. And I didn't get that as much this issue, so I still liked it very, very much. And I still think you can pick up from number 1 and love it, but it just was not quite as thrilling to me as the past couple have been. I'm just going to check in on the comments real quick to make sure I haven't broken anything. Okay, it doesn't look like I've broken anything, and I don't want to lose my place in the comments. So we're just going to keep moving. So Alligator Loki, I'm not going to do a minute on this every week, y'all. This one actually was a little bit funny. Slightly, the power goes out. Funny, haha. Okay, that's it. It's on the Marvel website. If you want to read it, go crazy. I did not pick up Archie's Valentine's Spectacular, but bless them for still being in the biz. Astonishing Avengers, which is one of the 3 astonishing books that are published every week on Marvel Unlimited. Let's see if I can get through all 3 astonishing books in a minute. This is written by Steve Orlando. It's a spin-off from his Avengers Assemble. It's art by Francesco Archidiacono, colors from Carlos Lopez, letters by Travis Lanham. This was kind of marginal. I don't really think the art is really hidden for me. There's something about this that looks very like I publish my own webcomic, which I love webcomics, but there's something about the faces and the colors that's just not striking me as like, this is Marvel quality. And the story, okay, I guess we're doing a minute on each one. The story, I didn't really get it. Like, there's this big obelisk. They go into Wonder Man goes into the little obelisk. He comes back out with their old enemy, and then it's kind of just over. And it feels like the characters were like narrating a lot of the things that they were doing. Again, I'm like, this is a digital format where the artist can just go wild and draw this crazy digital scroll, but maybe this artist is not up to it. And you have to think not every artist has the vision to just think of this roll of toilet paper that they can draw on endlessly for one of these comics. But I'm just disappointed because Steve Orlando's Jacket Squad were so cool in Avengers Assemble, and this was so like, ugh. But he also was dealing with the full main squad and the Jacket Squad. My hope is that it'll be Jacket Squad only as the next arc starts. This next one is Astonishing Spider-Man, number 15. We've established that I like the action beats a little bit more by this author, Scott Aukerman, than I do like the personal beats. So this had some fun action beats. They're doing this thing, Julian Shaw, the artist, and Cecilia Cruz, the colorist, with Spider-Man's costume. I can't really see it here, but you can see it on the cover, where they're putting so much shine on it that on individual panels of the web costume that it starts to look like it's metal to me, which it isn't. And I don't really understand the strategy of just making these shiny, because it gives it such a geometrical look when really it should be soft. It should look like it's wrapped around his body. And I think there's a real confusion about the motivation of the light source, but also the nature of the costume. When you see something like this that makes it look like he has a giant epaulette on his shoulder, I just don't think that's somebody who gets, and I think a little bit that comes from the line art, but a little bit comes from the color art. This was fine. Spider-Man got in some quips. It's okay. If you just are looking for a little pump of weekly Spider-Man, a little bit of fun, I think he's perfect for this. You know, he's a character that used to have a newspaper comic strip, so I don't need this to be world-shakingly excellent every week. It just should be fun. So then we have Astonishing X-Men, which is by Tim Seeley. Oh, this is the one with the credits that are so tiny that I can never read them. And Eduardo Adino, and colors from KJ Diaz and letters from Clayton Cowles. This actually was excellent. So last week, Juggernaut and Cap were kind of at odds in fighting. This one, they continue to fight, and it's a really good fight. And Adino takes very, very good advantage of the vertical scroll. It was hard to even get a capture of the page that I wanted to show you because the use of the vertical scroll was so good. And then they don't just fight. They actually talk. Cap has a moment with Juggernaut, and Juggernaut talks about like why he cares about mutants and what it means to be allied to mutants, because what Juggernaut is what? An ally, because he technically isn't a mutant, I don't think, unless they retconned it recently. And like him and Cap have a moment in the middle of this big fight, and then they're like, okay, we have to stop the ship from burning and all this destruction to happen. Let's not fight each other. Let's work together. I actually legitimately loved it. Like, it was really a really good X-Men comic at like 12 pages as a digital comic. You should be reading this. If you're reading the X-Men line, you have Marvel Unlimited, what the hell are you doing if you're not reading Astonishing X-Men? Also, Tim Seeley is amazing. Tim Seeley, I love you. Okay, Avengers by Jed McKay snuck in to my, not only snuck in, stormed in, barged in to my top 10 at number 2. Why? Because of a gentleman whose name is Fareed Karami. Look at this art. Look at it. Nobody at Marvel excites me like this right now. Nobody. And Federico Blee, who I sometimes kind of get annoyed with as a colorist, turns out if he has to color some characters that are totally blue, then the blue cast and everything else goes away. So look how nice the flesh tones are. But really, the art, nobody excites me like Cromie. Nobody. Even the best of the artists in DC, and I think DC has a much better stable of artists right now than Marvel. I don't even think anybody in DC excites me this much. I'm so happy that he's been discovered and promoted and that he can keep up like a semi-monthly pace. Everything is thrilling. And I don't think I showed it in a page here, but this has my favorite characters in it from Alan Davis Excalibur, TechNet. So I got to see, I didn't do a page, I got to see Fareed Cromie, my new favorite Marvel artist, drawing TechNet. I was screaming with glee. And it was a good story on top of all of that. So I am so hooked. I love the things Jed MacKay is doing with Kang in this run. It's what makes the run really, really fun and stand out. So what if Kang's not going to be in the MCU anymore? Start this Avengers run from the beginning and also read when Jed MacKay was writing the Timeless one-shots and really get a very thrilling story that feels very Jelly-esque, very Authority-esque of Kang. As we know, I'm still not reading Avengers Academy because I refuse to be rushed. I'm going to catch up to it when I catch up to it. And I actually did read several issues this week. I think I'm up to like 15. I'm still loving it, but I'm not up to current yet. There's 2 more comics in the pull today that are like that where I'm still catching up. I'm going to take a little sip of water, but we're not ready for a break yet. We're still in the A's. Now we're in the B's. Okay. Tate Brombaugh, what are you doing? Okay. So this is Batgirl. It's written by Tate Brombaugh with art from Takeshi Miyazawa and colors from, inks from Wayne Faucher, colors from Mike Spicer, and letters from Tom Napolitano. I'm very frustrated with this comic book. And I'm frustrated with 6-issue opening arcs in general. This is issue number 4. We're still having the same conversation from issue number 1. It's been 4 issues. Not only that, but this is a character, Cassandra Cain, who's been written extremely well in Birds of Prey, coming out, in this case, the same release week as Batgirl. Now, this art is amazing. I've never actually seen Miyazawa do art kind of in this tighter style. I think it's one of my favorite art that he's done, and I love his art in general. And Mike Spicer's color and him look amazing, but why are we still having these same conversations? And then even when a fight happens, it feels like we don't even get to see enough of the fight, and then we're talking about the fight. You don't have the time for this. I know that Cassandra Cain is a beloved character, but like, light the spark, blow the fuse, let's go somewhere. I'm so tired of 6-issue opening arcs. If you can't sell me what the book is here for and what you're going to do the different than other books in the line in an issue or 2, I don't know if I have the time for you. I mean, I do, clearly, because I'm still doing the show, and I'm still talking about every Marvel and DC comic book, but I just can't get excited. It's the same problem I have with Absolute Wonder Woman right now. So it's not like Kelly Thompson is the panacea to this, because I'm saying that she's doing it well in Birds of Prey because I think she fell into the same trap in Absolute Wonder Woman. I think something that Absolute Superman is doing right is that you could read any one of the first 4 issues of Absolute Superman as if it was the first issue, and it would still work. Even though they form a loose arc, they're all one-shotty. This Batgirl comic is not like that. It's just one never-ending conversation, and I want to like it. I love Cass. I want Tate Brombaugh to succeed. I freaking love the colors and the art, but it is just moving too slow for me, and I'm starting to hate it. Even though the quality is good. Like, quality-wise, I can accept the quality is the quality of a good comic book, but it's making me angry. Farewell, sweet Chip Zdarsky. This is his last issue of Batman. And this final arc, The Dying City, kind of just felt like an epilogue. It didn't even feel like a main part of his run. He just had some things he wanted to tie up. But actually, I think you could read his run as just ending with Absolute Power and then dovetailing into Absolute Power. This arc I struggled with. There was a different artist every issue. 2 of them come back here, George Jimenez and Tony D'Angelo, two amazing artists, both colored by Tomo Moray and letters by Clayton Cowles. But it just felt like this went by so fast. Like this confrontation with Star happened so fast. The makeup with Jim Gordon happened so fast. There's a fight on a plane that I think deliberately echoes the first arc of Tom King's run on the same Batman 2016 series. It just didn't feel like Zdarsky had enough runway, to land this plane, of this comic book. And he just got like 5 more issues and he just had to make it work. I know we're about to do Jim Lee and Jeff Loeb on Hush. I'm not excited, but we'll see. It might be great. I just wish, and maybe Chip Zdarsky, I don't know his mind. Maybe he was done here. Maybe this was it. And some of it did look great. But this last arc, it was just too many different artists. It was speed running through something that it felt like we needed more time with. There was the Gordon thing, the Enigma thing, the KGB agent thing, the thing with the mayor, the thing with the Vandal Savage. And I just feel like we're left kind of on shaky ground. And you know that Jeff Loeb and Jim Lee are not going to address that in their Hush Part 2. So maybe Tom Taylor is going to pick up a lot of it in his Detective Comics. But it was decent. but it left me feeling really unfulfilled. And I'm somebody who actually loved all of Zdarsky's Batman. I was loving it when everybody else was hating it, but I'm just a little disappointed that we went out of this run in such a rush. All right, so let me catch up on some comics. That's what I've been doing for days. Let me catch up on some comments. Adam S. Messenger is a bold choice to claim something without a published ending is my favorite comic. Oh, maybe we're talking about Lazarus? Well, look, we don't all get endings. Rank that power, baby. Yes, power rankings. We love them. WoW Plus presents is cheap and worth it. Hayden signed on. Apparently, I sound like the OmniDog stream. I don't know what I was doing. We're several minutes behind now. This was 20 minutes ago. That might be what it sounds like, the OmniDog stream. Okay, let's see if anybody... Bunkmaster spoiling you in this week's Ultimates handling of privatized prisons was so on brand and perfect. Glad that Dust to Dust is getting love. I can't wait to talk about Ultimates, but it's at the end of the alphabet, so y'all are just gonna have to hang. Jenny saying, whoa, that was intense. Maybe me talking about my top 10 comics all in a minute. I agree, it was intense. Logan Wayne says, what Krakoa Omnis would I like to see? I want to see it all in reading order with the digital comics included, Marvel. Also, I would maybe buy a Gillen one on its own, but what am I saying? I don't have anything by Marvel from after 2015. I don't, except for, I think I got Unstoppable Wasp for Kid Crisis, but that's it. I don't have any post-2015 Marvel because I don't do that physically. If I knew that they were mapping Krakoa completely in the right order and they were going to do all of it, I would have that, because to me, that is my X-Men story that I think X-Men has always been meant to tell. But if they are going to mess it up and then they're not going to include the digital comics when they get there, then I can just keep reading it online in the order that I know to be correct. So I want to buy it and I want to support it, but I'm not going to drop over $1,000 on omnibuses if they're not going to get it right. Do I have a comic of the week? Well, I have the comics I think are going to be in my top comics of the week, and then I have generally my favorite comics of the week are ones that go up in the top 10. That's not always going to be the case, though, as the averages get bigger and bigger. So Avengers was my comic of the week this week, and Ultimates probably tied, which is funny because usually Marvel sucks. And I say this is a dedicated Marvel zombie, but they have not been great recently. But I don't know. It feels like too many layers. I have so many bits and things that I do in this show already, but I'll think about it. It's a good. I like comments like that. And if it would be interesting, then I would do it. And maybe I could talk about the comic of the week earlier in the show, but I like making you wait when my comics of the week are late in the alphabet. Maybe I could just tell you what it's going to be, and then you'll hang on in suspense. Lance McNair says, Ignore have answered already. Any thoughts on Fantastic Four teaser? Overall, I'm happy with how it looks, but I'm keeping it level. I don't watch movies. I read comic books. I don't mean that to be mean. Like, I'll see it eventually when it's on Disney Plus. I fundamentally do not care about movies that star comic book characters. I'm a comic book fan, not a comic book movie fan. I personally, if we want to get into it, I think every one of them are miscast. There you go. Chew on that. Joining late, good to see you live. Good to see you too as well, JM21. Ziozaku also jumping in, working, creating a superhero universe. What are some of the best non-big two companies that did this the best? You got to study early Image from the 90s, because that was each of them doing their own universe and then sharing the universe between them. If you want to see a modern person doing it well, or at least really interestingly, Jeff Lemire's Black Hammer, I think, is a really good one to look into, because it's a world that got so popular that maybe he didn't originally intend to expand that far, and then he expanded it farther because it wound up having legs. I think that's the right way to do it. You don't plan as a newbie to, like, this is going to involve 8 books and 5 teams, and what you don't know. So you need to have a central spine that's so compelling and so good that you can branch off of it if there's interest, and if not, you know those stories are there, but you're telling it in a single spine. And I think Black Hammer is probably one of the gold standards of that. Novarg, we all know I love Novarg's name and his little, it's his own illustration. I almost said it was by Kirby, but that's from his comic book. Hey there, just hopped in to check the stream. Meanwhile, coloring page 211 for 450 total. I cannot wait to see it, Novarg. I will definitely feature it on the show when you're done. Kane says, cold pizza, cold Chinese food depends. Is good for breakfast. Can't change my mind. I agree. Chris Brogan says, maybe each week I could pick my queer book of the week. Well, I don't know if there's always a good queer book of the week. And also, I get sensitive about, like, I don't know. I'm not, like, immersed in the queerness and the queer community just because I like Drag Race and wear lip gloss, speaking of which I have to reapply. So I don't want to, I kind of get nervous about my voice being the voice that's saying that, because in many regards, I'm very, very straight passing, and I would argue, like, how much it's a complicated topic. So I don't know if I want to highlight the queer thing of the week. I think I am happy to highlight a thing is queer, and I liked it being queer. And in some cases, I didn't like it being queer, which we're going to get to later in the show. Oddly enough, I prefer my fried chicken leftover and cold. Me too. Lance McNair says sometimes everybody likes cold food. I'm discovering. Maybe it isn't neurodivergent. Maybe we just all like cold food. Novark says, I have the premium hardcovers for all new X-Men, which were so awkwardly mapped that I lost track and never finished the run. I realized everything that happened until that point. And if you have all the oversized hardcovers, don't get this omnibus, because actually, if you have the oversized hardcovers, it's easier to intersperse Battle of the Atom and Black Vortex with those, and they're not in the omnibus. Max can't wait for the clashing reviews between me and James. You know they're coming. Press Brogan, hurrah for reading your entire polls. Oh gosh, I'm still so behind. Ryan Wilson, Peter, are you still using the same spreadsheet you shared on Twitter last year to keep everyone? I don't think I shared a spreadsheet on Twitter last year. I think you're thinking of How to Love Comics shared a spreadsheet last year. Mine is still from 2017. I don't think I've ever shared it with anybody other than Max, because it has a lot of automation in it, because it does all these like charts and best ofs and stuff. And it's become so custom to me that I don't think I could give it to anybody anymore, and it would just work. So I gave a version to Max to see if he could break it. And then I'm going to take Max's version and then make that finally available. But it's going to be, I've been promising it to OmniDog since 2019, so it's going to take me some time, but it is on my list of things to do this week. James Abel with his first review of the day, Absolute Superman 4. The series is getting better and better. Wow, the journey Lois is on, the introduction of Omega Prime, and Jimmy, give me more of this. Yeah, I love the introduction of Omega Prime. I love Jimmy in it. It was a really good issue. Max Appelman, Absolute Superman, didn't hit me as hard as the previous issue, but enjoyed it quite a lot. That's where I am. Still amazing comics making, just not like making my head explode level comics making. Steven Patterson, Alligator Loki is a poor man's Jeff the Land Shark. Indeed. It's just not as, it's like as cute as Jeff the Land Shark, but it's not as funny. Like Jeff the Land Shark lands these little jokes so quickly, and part of that is Goro is just unmatched. And Bob Quinn is really good, but I just don't feel like Bob Quinn is landing the jokes, and I don't know if Alyssa Wong's script has any jokes in it. Adam S. Messenger says the other drawback to toilet paper format is going to be reprinted in physical at some point. They got to be conscious how they want their comic chopped up. Maybe. Adam, it's been since 2021, and very, very few, I would say less than 1% of these issues have been printed physically. So I don't think that's as big of a deal as we all think it is. I would like it if Marvel every couple of years put out a trade paperback of like all of the stuff. It's getting to the point where they are doing that regularly with like Jeff, where after a while they'll put one issue of Jeff, and Jeff is so short that it's like got 12 comics of Jeff in it sometimes. But no, most of them have never been collected physically. So I don't know if it's realistically a concern at all. And honestly, Marvel used to do crazier paneling when they were doing the Infinity comics that like animated instead of just the Infinite Scroll. And they still figured out how to fit those into printed comic books, like Deadpool Dracula's Gauntlet. So I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying I don't think it's as big as I don't think that's as big of a deal as maybe we all might assume it would be. But I'm sure if you're an artist who is used to working in the world of panels, that maybe that's always going to be in your mind. Anyone watching the Super Bowl, I mean, I care about the Eagles, but I won't be watching, but that's a thing to leave in chat. Reaper XC, Scott Aukerman, who's writing that Spider-Man, Astonishing Spider-Man, is a very funny person. He's between two ferns, and he runs the comedy podcast network, Comedy Bag Bang, who a comedian I really like, Vic Michaelis, was recently on, but I did not get a chance to listen. Remexo says, the stream makes me want to get into reading single issues. Don't, it's a trap. If you're reading trades right now, stay out of the trap, just read the trades. James Abel says, Fareed Karami on Avengers 23 seems to be having a blast drawing this. The reason we learn why Black Cat is working with Kang is a perfect reason. Can't wait for the next one. Yeah. Well, Jed McKay, I mean, he is the champion of the Black Cat resurgence. He brought Black Cat back, and now everybody can't keep their hands off of Black Cat. And he really gets Black Cat. And I love that we got a little tickle of how well McKay knows Black Cat in the issue. Elon Reed's glad my headphones on for that moment, Peter. Who, God only knows what I said. I mean, Elon, I don't know. Wait, the mouth goes so fast, and for 3 hours, I can't be held. I mean, I should be held responsible. I am responsible, but I can't be held responsible for remembering what I might have said back at 10:56. Okay, we got to keep going, unfortunately. James Abel, Batgirl number 4. I'm enjoying the mother and daughter dynamic, but I feel like it's stretching the plot into 6 issue of arc. We agree. And I'm trying to see if there's anybody who's really Reaper agreeing. Arc should be 3 or 4 issues. Get through the setup, start telling the bigger plot. Okay. And Jarn Paul says, I read that 4 Absolute Wonder Woman issue in one go yesterday and definitely didn't have a problem with the opening conflict as a whole arc. Probably a monthly gripe. Yeah, but I think the thing is, comics have to serve both masters. And if you are reading in trade, then it's invisible to you. But also, it doesn't, if you're only writing for trade, like comics have to always work multiple. It has to work as singles on the week that it comes out. It has to work as singles on a lot of these online platforms as people are reading them or buying them singly, and it's got to work in trade, and it's hard. And there's plenty of books that will read just fine in trade, but even when I read in trade, I still am reading them as single issue pieces of art. It's really, even when Hickman takes out all the covers and tries to smush them together, the individual unit to me is individual issues. So I would have that same comment even in trade. Electric Alpha, that is too big a question but off the top of my head, could change. My top female X-Men characters, obviously Dazzler, obviously Jean Grey, obviously Rogue, which doesn't leave me a lot of places to go. I would have said Kitty Pryde, but I feel like Kitty's had her story now. Like I'm not like so hyped to see more Kitty. Probably Danny Moonstar. I really love Danny Moonstar. And Surge. That's pretty consistent. I think they're usually in my top 10. Okay. I have to start reading Zarski's newsletter again because I fell off of reading all newsletters. There's only so many words that can go into my brain in any given week. There's 2 people I haven't said hi to yet, so I'm going to get their comments up. Mall360 took me up on Lovesick. Started Dollports and absolutely love it. So dark and can't put it down. Well, that comic was too disturbing for me to even read all of, but some people are into that, and apparently I made a good recommendation. Mall turned out being into that. And Tiger Eyes, not to age myself, but remember, leave it to chance. I don't know if I do. I'd have to see it. Maybe if I saw it, I would know. All right, we're going to bookmark that, which was only 6 minutes ago, and then we got to continue. I'm so happy that you all have this many things to say, and you know that even if I don't read them all live on camera, I do go back when I put the bookmarks in the stream, because fun fact, if you rewatch this, like if you have to go and then come back, if you the next day, I have bookmarked all of the comics, so you can like jump around and find things that you want to find. So that exists. Okay, so let me get all my infrastructure here up in my producer list environment here and talk about Batman Off-World. This one is so funny to me, because this was like, Jason Aaron's finally DC Comics. Oh my gosh. And Doug Monk's going to draw it. It's inked by Jamie Mendoza. It's colored by David Barron. It's lettered by Troy Peteri. And then it took 14 months to release 6 issues. Now, luckily, it was not in current continuity. It was set in like that tenuous year 3 zone where Batman has supervillains, but he's still kind of small time. So it didn't really matter that it was coming out really far apart. But I just think it's so funny because Jason Aaron wound up stealing his own thunder on this by then subsequently being announced for Ninja Turtles when only like 3 issues of this had come out. So the whole idea of Jason Aaron being a big deal new at DC kind of faded away, even though he did write a little bit of Action Comics last year too. And then the big news was Jason Aaron was writing Ninja Turtles. So it's probably because Doug Mank is slow, honestly, because Jason Aaron is not a slow writer. This was fun. I mean, it was space pulp. It was pulp. It had beautiful, vibrating colors. This issue didn't really work for me because it was so focused on the brutality of billions of people dying, and it might be Batman's fault. And it was like, Batman's not Jean Grey. Like, you can't lay that on him. And also that Batman's being to his pulp. His hand explodes inside his suit. Well, then he'd be dead. Like, I think Aaron gets really stuck on this, like, brutality is so cool. And I know some of you like that. And it's fine that you like that. I'm not judging you for liking that. But for me, as somebody who's really looking for, like, narrative consistency and a narrative that tracks for a comic character, when your comic book is all about all that brutality stuff, I start to lose the scope of the human impact. And then when it finally came back around to the human impact, which is how this really got resolved, is how the climax was reached, I didn't buy it because the human impact looked so small compared to how big the scope had gotten that it no longer made sense to me. I still think this is a fun book. If you like Jason Aaron, if you like Doug Mank, if you like this kind of super vibrating, bold color look from David Barron, then I think you'll enjoy it. But it's just a fizzy pastime. It's not an all-timer of a Batman book. This is called BeccaBoo, the Bimbo Ghost. It's created by a woman, so, you know, I might like it, actually. Who knows? Birds of Prey by Kelly Thompson. So I really love this book. I think if you want to study a perfect #1 script, go study that first #1 issue by Kelly Thompson from 2013. This is Kelly as writer and a favorite artist of mine, Juan Cabal, who a long time was a Marvel-only artist, colored by Adriano Lucas, who I love, and Clayton Cowles as letterer. This has got the mojo back. I think the last arc, I didn't really understand why Kelly Thompson picked the characters she picked. This one is back to the core 4 of, Canary, Oracle, and Barda and Cass, and it also has Sin, and it also has Constantine. They go on 2 separate missions. Both of the missions are interesting. There's lots of funny personal stuff. I think you could absolutely just start here, even if you don't want to go back all the way to the #1 and really enjoy it. I'm kind of sad that we lost that like strobing 70s color quality that Jordi Belair brought to the early issues. There's a little hint of it, but I think Adriano Lucas is such a clean, saturated color quality to his coloring that we're not going to go back and try to recapture that. But I like where this is dropping off from. I like that we're dealing the whole sequence with Sin and Black Canary speaking one conversation out loud and then giving each other signals the other way so that they knew what was actually happening was really, really well done. Kelly Thompson is great at that kind of stuff. This comic book is great. It's reliably great. And even last arc, which I didn't love, was still a good comic, but it really feels like we're like back in the saddle with this issue. Oh, I love this page. What a fun page. Just Barda. Oh, I love Tiger Eyes comments. Well, it only lasts a little while. Okay. I love this page. Barred it in this, but now you couldn't see my timer. You couldn't see how good I was doing. Barred it in the sea of yellow and then smiling, and you know there's going to be some smash after that. Love it. So yeah, this book, really, really enjoyable book. This is called Blasted. I think it must be a Kickstarter comic because the last issue came out in 2023 and this issue came out this week, and it says includes issue 1 and 2. So I think it's like they're like bringing people along with that, but you know, it was released, so I'm trying to acknowledge it. Bronze Faces. I don't know if a minute's going to be enough, but I'm going to try. So I saw this cover and I saw it was a creative team I'd never seen before. I was like, great, that's what I'm here for, right? And this creative team really did some really interesting work here because this is all about, I want to say, if I remember my notes correctly, Nigerian characters. And it really brings their language and their dialect in a way that's not threatening. Like at no point did I think I don't understand this. It used it in a way that I understand the rhythms of the way that they were speaking English. And then by the end, I really understood their dialect of English. And I thought that was really cool. It's written by Shobo and Shoft, illustrated by Alexandra Tifengi, colored by Lee Luffridge, and lettered by Hassan Atsman Elo. But the thing is, I don't know if Tifengi as an artist could keep up with the big plan that Shobo and Shof had for the script. It's about these 3 siblings. Their father made these beautiful, beautiful masks, and he passes away, and the masks are on display at the British Museum, and they're not interested, or they're en route to being on display there, and they're not interested in giving them back to the family. And so the son and the daughter, and I think a close family friend or like a niece or something, are trying to decide what they're going to do about the masks. I think that's a really cool story. I think the writing is really good. The art, there's like this page layout, so cool, trying to do so much. This payout, so cool, trying to do so much. I just don't know if the artist is all the way there for me. And unfortunately, by the end of the comic, I really was not eager to read another issue, which is a shame because I think the writing is really good and I love the story concept, but I just found myself too distracted by the art. And especially when we got into action beats later in the issue, as they decide maybe they do want to take back the masks, I couldn't really get lost in the art. But I still actually would recommend checking this out because if you are not a stickler for really clean sequential art the way that I am, this might really hit for you. And I do think the writing is really good. This is Cherry. It's been around since 1982, and this is issue number 24. So they are releasing Cherry relatively slowly. Cool Kingdom. So this is the Oni Press EC Comics anthology book about, and I don't think I saved the credits for this one. Oh, no. Oh, or I put the credits right in here. Okay, you can't read this, but A Rare Immunity by Chris Condon, A Hammer of Witches by Steve Niles, and A Seat of Power by Cameron Chittock. Here's the thing about this. I think if you're going to do indie anthology, especially indie fantasy anthology, each anthology story has to be so big, so bold, so memorable that it deserved to get told in 10 pages and it makes you want more. I'm not saying it has to be a pilot. It can be self-contained. But when I think about the first issue of this from earlier this month, I could page for page still tell you about the Greg Pak story and about the Al Ewing story. They were that good. In this issue, this one's about a cursed sword. We've seen it before. This one's about witches. It actually was not interesting at all. This one's about a king who actually is like the puppet of his advisors. It was okay, but it was very pat. I'm just like, I don't know if I felt like these 3 stories demanded to be told. And if you're going to get me to pick up your anthology every month, you've got to demand my attention. I think 2000 AD demands attention sometimes, but 2000 AD also has serialized ongoing things. These are all one-shot. It's really hard to keep my attention if you're doing one-shot stories every month and you're not doing things at the caliber of that Al Ewing story from the last issue. I will give this one more issue and it better knock my socks off of my feet or else it's going to be a drop for me. Exorcism at 1600 Penn was a drop for me. I read the first issue. This is by Hannah Rose May and Vanessa Del Rey. I know Vanessa Del Rey is a very experienced interior artist and she's done a lot of really wonderful stuff. I just don't think she's consistent enough at likenesses. I was reading the whole book and I was having trouble understanding if the characters were the same, following what they were doing, the faces. I felt like I was looking at a different cover of a different comic in panel after panel. And you're going to hear this a lot from me, especially this week. I really like interior consistency and it didn't get me there. Now, is it interesting? The idea is it's actually a cool concept. There's a new president. She has 2 kids that are going to school, a Catholic school in Washington, D.C. And one of the big problems she's dealing with early in her presidency is the Havana syndrome, where there's people who have this like sickness and they're maybe being hit by like low frequency noise. And it's happening throughout the U.S. International kind of corps, spies and diplomats and things. And she keeps getting briefed on it. But then maybe is it being used on somebody in her house? But maybe is it demonic possession? The script kind of felt a little overwritten to me, like it was a TV pilot, and then the likenesses weren't matching panel to panel, so I just couldn't. I tried. I want to support an interesting book like this that's out of the norm. I like heaven and hell stuff. I like politics, but it just didn't have the quality for me personally. I like Popeye. I was so excited to read this. Everybody on Twitter was reading it a couple months ago and posting all their pictures of it. I wanted to read it so bad. Apparently, it started as a digital comic. I scoured the internet trying to find some way. I even was willing to like read it over somebody's shoulder on YouTube if they were paging through it because I wanted to read it so bad. I do not buy physical comics, but I will pay for a digital comic if you make it available for me to pay for. And there's no digital version of it. So screw you, Popeye. Screw you. FemForce, another comic that there's no digital version of. Here's the thing. FemForce has been around forever. This is issue 204. And how many people are just now picking up FemForce at the back of previews with issue 204? I don't think a ton. And I think that once you're that book that you're so deep into, and look, I love not renumbering. I'm pro not renumbering, but I know it gets harder and harder to attract somebody to be like issue 2000 or 204 or 2004, jump in here. I'm just saying digital makes that easier. Like if you would be on digital, I could say, oh, hey, I read this, and it would be easier. So it's not digital, so I can't even try it. But wait. Breaking news. I have breaking news on this channel because if you, well, not really. If you read the press release, you already know. But a few weeks ago, I did my Moment of Krisis about DSTLRY, or as we know them here, D-list Larry. They're not A-list Larry, like Larry's Library, or sometimes Dust Larceny, and how they, on their platform, were treating individual comic issues digitally as NFTs, where they only sold them on the week. And then if you didn't get them on the week, then afterwards you had to buy them from somebody else who had already bought it, which I thought was insanity and made it not worth recommending to you. Even though I did wind up buying one issue of the Chip Zdarsky series and also one issue of the Scott Snyder series, and they were both like incredibly amazing. Well, somebody from D-list Larry actually commented on that video to tell me that now they are selling digital copies of each issue's evergreen. Like they're always, the main cover of the digital issue is always going to be available. Possibly due to my feedback. I don't think so, but probably due to seeing that they were missing that word of mouth spread that comes from having digital still available as people are catching the word of mouth. So DSTLRY is back on the table. I'm willing to talk to them again because I think that's smart. They're listening to consumers. They're making their things accessible in a democratized way. But the single issue digital is still really expensive. It's $16 in New Zealand, so it must be $9 or $10 in the States. But their comics are like 52 pages each. So DSTLRY will be back if I see books that I want to read by DSTLRY. And that is breaking news here on Crushing Krisis. That's the breaking news sound. Okay. Well, since we paused anyway, I might as well go back to the comics. Okay. Have I been Dragman by Steve Appleby? I have not read Dragman. More things to put on the list when I go back through the comics. Chris Bergen loved the cover of that book, apparently, Dragman. Lance McNair has gotten pretty good at separating comic movie adaptations from actual comics. No matter how bad or good the movie turns out, you always have the comics. That's right. And since I don't really watch TV or movies, and I already have the comics, I don't need the TV and movies. Absolute Wonder Woman's pacing has discouraged me from being a single issue reader. Lance and I were talking about this on Blue Sky. Kenneth Curley says, I think DC has been doing great with DC on an absolute line. As for Marvel, 50-50 hit or miss with a few titles aside from Ultimate Spider-Man. I think Marvel's doing much worse than 50-50, and I think DC is doing much, much better than 80-20. I think you can pick up any DC book right now, and it's going to at least be okay, and it might be fantastic. I really think DC is spanking Marvel's bare bottom right now on the market. A Fifth of Jack Gaming says, I've started my dive into a truly indie book, TMNT, when it first came out in compendium form. Yeah, original D&D, Eastman and Laird 1980s D&D. It is gritty, it is messy, it is, and I have a guide to it on my site. If you can't figure out what compendium come next or why they skip different issues, it is a Patreon, probably a $2 Patreon guide on my site. Edwin Billiot hates the way Hickman's put together his omnibus without putting the covers in the middle. Well, he's looking for a universal single reading experience, which I respect, but I like seeing the cover. That kind of throws me off, but it's fun to read. But because I think in single issues, throws me off. And Lance Veneer says, I haven't read issue 4 yet. This is more about Absolute Wonder Woman. Would do something more interesting with Circe raising Diana. Circe is, I have faith Kelly Thompson will get there. Circe is also my favorite Wonder Woman villain. I used to write in a writer RPG, like everybody wrote their characters full novel form, a character named Circe, because it's actually one of my favorite mythologies. Kenneth Curley says, Jason Aaron's Bizarro arc in Action Comics was 50-50. Yeah, I hated the Bizarro arc. Started okay, did not like where it ended. But I don't always love Jason Aaron, so that didn't super shock me. But I think a lot of these superstar drop-in 3-issue ones on Action Comics have been kind of crappy, actually. I think Mark Waid did it so well with his 12-issue weekly series that I'm like, screw these superstar people. Like, let's do more of that. Munin saying, good evening. Kenneth Grilly saying Birds of Prey by Kelly Thompson has been such a great read. Stephen Patterson saying I bet OmniDog is a big fan of BeccaBoo the Bimbo Ghost. I don't know anything about it, so I'm not going to speculate. James Abel, Red Bronze Faces. Mixed feeling in this. Enjoyed the heist parts, but I feel like there's something missing from it, and I don't know what. A Fifth of Jack Gaming saying, anyone else panic ordering IDW stuff? I'm trying to get all their TMNT because I have a bad feeling about them going under. Well, even if they went under, their books that are at distributors would already be at distributors. That's the problem that people are having with Diamond right now. Diamond has their books in warehouse, so technically Diamond owes them money. But Diamond's in bankruptcy, so Diamond can't pay them the money, so they can't profit from the books. That it's the whole thing. So I think even if IDW went under tomorrow, it wouldn't necessarily mean that all their books would like be gone. But if you've been waiting to get something like Turtles, now might be the time. William Lee dropping in. Afternoon to all, and to you, William Lee, as well. And hey, I'm all caught up. Lance noticed March in the background. I have all three. Now would be a good time to read them. That's why they're in the background. Let's get our civil rights on our mind, folks. Sometimes there's some Easter eggs here in the background. Okay, I'm all caught up. Y'all are just vibing. I know we're getting close to the Super Bowl kickoff, but I'm not watching the Super Bowl here. If you have to leave, you can always rewatch this tomorrow. And I'll have chapter marks, so it's a win-win, really. But I love that you're watching me live. And let's be honest, I'm still going to be talking when we get to kickoff. We're only on F. Okay, let's continue to Frankenstein. New World. This is so... the Mignola-verse right now, not to spoil it, but Hellboy's not around, and the BPRD is not around, and there's this whole new world, whoa, it's in the title, right now, that comes after them. And I've read like 3 of the books now. They're all pretty good. This is not as good as that other one that I read a couple of weeks ago, but it was good. Frankenstein's adventuring with this young girl. They don't really understand. They don't really explain why or like what they're doing or anything, but that's fine. I'm patient. It was a really well-made book. Great art by Peter Berting and colors from Michelle Madsden. Loved it. Great letters from Clem Robbins. So I really enjoyed all of those things. But here's the thing. I know that we make fun of DC and Marvel for all their like one-shots and limited series and things. I need a World of Hellboy one-shot to tell me what the fuck is going on. I am not following it. I don't get it. I know I could just read Hellboy and Hell, but it just feels like they're launching all these individual comics, but none of them actually say, they're like dancing around whatever it is that's happening. They're dinosaurs, the world, it's post-apocalyptic, but some things are still, I don't know. I liked it. Fine, I'm going to keep reading it. I know it's my own dumb fault for not reading Hellboy and Hell, but that was years ago now. So give me a little one-shot reminder. Launch your, go do a Ghost Machine. Go do a DC All In. Do a Marvel Incoming. Let me put some stakes in the ground here. Galaxy of Madness. I read the first issue of this book from Magdalene Visaggio and Michael Avon Oeming. I didn't really like it, so it was a drop for me, but it's interesting. It's hard sci-fi. Magdalene Visaggio is doing like a very hard sci-fi concept, kind of like Interstellar-ish, but because it's Oeming illustrating it very much in the style of this cover, it comes off kind of comedic when I don't think it's supposed to be coming comedic. I don't always love Oeming. I love Oeming when he's perfectly cast. I loved him doing that Mr. Freeze story we read last week. So I just couldn't hang. Like the hard sci-fi and the cartooniness of it was too dissonant for me, and it felt like a chore for me to read. But if you like Oeming and you like kind of cool hard sci-fi and these people being on a deep space mission that's dealing with like interstellar type stuff, you might actually really like it. I don't read Gatchman, but bless Mad Gabe for publishing Gatchman. Okay. Yeah. I know a lot of you have Amazon Prime subscriptions, which means you could be reading this for free right now on Amazon, even if you're not subscribed to Comixology. This is called GhostBox. It's by Mike Carey. The art and letters and everything but colors is by Pablo Raimondi. And colors is Jose Villaruba, who's amazing. This, to me, I feel like I've been transported back to mid-90s, early 2000s Vertigo. It has that feel, and not just because of Mike Carey. It starts with characters, with people, and we're like, I even made a comment on the first issue. Where is this going? I can't even tell if it's going anywhere. Then we introduce the big concept. Then we go deeper into the big concept, and we find that within the big concept, there's a lot of conflict. Then we get into, now that we understand, now we're getting into like the big spooky aspect of it. I love it. It's about this ornamental box that 2 sisters find, and it's a ghost box. It contains the ghosts of everybody who died nearby, which means a lot of times people are looking to kill people nearby. And so there's a whole world inside of the box, and then a whole world fighting for the box outside of the box. And that is fascinating. The art is amazing. The story is so interesting. I love this feel of comic book. I love the heaven. I love any kind of heaven. It's not really heaven and hell. There is an angel, but it's not my normal heaven and hell bullshit. It's just so well made, and it feels like stately, like it feels well paced. I don't feel the need to rush through it. I was happy to take my time reading every issue and like getting absorbed in the pages. The art is so good. There's a reason this is in my top 10 right now. I don't think there's a lot of people doing this kind of comic book with this amount of gloss that feels. Vertigo to me never felt rushed or decompressed. There was something thick and satisfying about every issue of a Vertigo comic for many, many years there. And this feels like that. And I swear it's not just because Carrie's name on it, but it is because that's who Carrie is. Highly endorsed. If you're an Amazon Prime subscriber, it is just available to you on Amazon. Otherwise, you can buy it on Comixology, but it is a Comixology comic. So I don't think there's a physical version of it right now. Really, really love it. Straight into my top 10. I did not read Godfather of Hell from Vault Comics. I don't know if this actually wound up coming out last week because, as I mentioned, Vault kind of has pivoted their distribution model. So I think all of their individual releases are a little bit behind right now. So I don't think this came out last week. But this is by Kevin Scott, who I've read in a lot of Star Wars stuff and a couple of random Marvel things. He's okay. I know he's mostly a novelist. He doesn't really excite me. So I mean, you know, it's the Godfather and Hell, and this lady's got maggot on her dress, but I couldn't get excited, and I don't always love Vault, so that was a skip for me. I stuck around for one more issue of this Green Hornet and Miss Fury book, and the reason I did, honestly, is because the art in it is just so damn good. It reminds me of Greg Smallwood, but it's by Federico Sarasa with colors from Leslie Atlansky. It's really good. Really, really good art. And this issue let me get a little bit more of a feel for who Green Hornet is. Of course, he's like a pulp hero that's been around forever. I have no relationship with him, so I don't know what his personality is supposed to be or anything. It really just feels like a Batman Catwoman book that happens to have these two other characters in it. And honestly, script-wise, I do not think Alex Segura and Henry Barajas are doing a very good job, just because there's a little bit of a mystery here, but then it kind of like speed races through the mystery to get us to a point where it like reveals what's been so mysterious here. And then also, I still don't really totally get who these characters are, or like why I should care about them. And then they're having interpersonal things, and they're arguing, and they have a rivalry, and then somebody else is here who might be killing them, and then like 18 different people get stabbed in the last couple of pages. I'm hanging on by a thread because I like pulp heroes that kind of have been brought back and their IP has been brought alive. And I love Federico Sarrasa's art here, but this script is limp AF for me right now, which is something I've been feeling on a lot of scripts by Segura. So maybe he's just not for me. I'd be really interested to know if any of you are reading it. Grimm is one that I'm catching up on slowly because I read the first arc. This is by Stephanie Phillips, who writes Phoenix, and also Flaviano, who drew a lot of New Mutants issues that we really, really liked on this channel back when we used to do This Week in Acts. And I find this fascinating. I'm up to issue 11 or 12. I was reading it this morning before the show. I will not be rushed. I think I'll probably be caught up for the next issue or maybe 2 issues from now because I'm reading like an arc at a time. But it's about a group of Grim Reapers. There's all different Grim Reapers. There's like a main Grim Reaper, but then there's all these junior Reapers who do most of the reaping and collect souls. But then something goes really haywire with the dying of people and the collecting of souls. And it's about this one main character, junior Grim Reaper. Absolutely love the first arc. Could not recommend it any more highly, but sometimes books have good first arcs and then they don't go anywhere. You never know. So I want to get all the way to present before I tell you I'm in love with this book. But if the quality stays as high as it was for the first 2 arcs, also Flaviano's art colored by Rico Renzi's off the hook. So if that quality stays, I'm going to love it, but I'm not up to present yet. Okay. Gunslinger Spawn. Oh, Todd. Well, look, Todd, we know I have problems with Todd, and Todd, who knows, might have problems with me. But Carlo Barberi's art is so good, especially covered by Ivan Nunes, and there are so many fun moments in this because we brought in one of the angel people for Spawn to fight, and also he's like fighting this bear, which has been going on for like an issue and a half right now. Todd, we don't need 2.5 issues of Gunslinger fighting a bear, okay? But it did look really good. The action tracked really well. And then this angel person came in, and it's in the style of the old Angela Angels with all the little ribbons and stuff. And they had a really fun confrontation. And once we like the thing about Gunslinger Spawn that's interesting is he's not only from the past, but he's not a very high powered Spawn. And all of the Spawns are really low on power right now. So he's like barely clinging to life. And to be confronted with this angel who, even though he's also missing powers, it's certainly much more powerful than Gunslinger Spawn, is a very outmatched setup. And so it allowed Gunslinger Spawn to feel unique and this to feel like it's really about him. I've been catching up from the beginning as I've been reading this. So I think I'm up to issue like 6 now. So I've got a while to go because I haven't been saying issue numbers very much. I think this was issue 40. And I really like the start of this series. Yeah, issue 40. I kind of really enjoy it. So who knows what I'm going to feel by the time we get to issue 40, but I'm starting to get a little bit more for a feel of this character, but it's just been so decompressed recently. I would say if you want to sample this, just start from the beginning and see if you like it. Or I guess just pick up this issue, but don't feel the need to go back 2 or 3 issues because it's been so decompressed lately that I don't think you really benefit from it. All right, y'all. I hate this comic book. I hate it with the fury of 1,000 suns. It's written by Jeff Lemire. Here's the thing though, Joey Vasquez comes on art here. I forgot the previous artist. I hated the previous artist. I think they were fine artists. It was not the right look for this book. It was just too like rough. And I think for JSA, you either need to go high gloss like Geoff Johns JSA, or you've got to go like something kind of retro that kind of gives you the feeling of like golden age comic books, or do something really, really indie and kind of flat looking because this is Jeff Lemire writing it and he's got a vibe, but you can't go with that like scratchy, messy, lots of loose lines look on a comic like this. It doesn't work for me. So this kind of went back to DC's house style, which is fine, but the JSA is barely in it. We're only like following 1 or 2 characters. And the big problem I'm having is that the Injustice Society, I don't understand what their plan is. We started in medias res or Ray with us already with an attack underway on the team. We're 4 issues into that. I still don't know what the stakes are. The bad guys are just arguing about Fate's helmet. It just, there's no stakes. There's no characters. It doesn't feel like a JSA book. It just feels like random character jumble. There's no motivations. It's just not exciting to me. And this is a group of characters that can excite me. I don't know them well, but if you give me some time with them on the panel, they do get exciting. I have made guides to them. I know who they all are. I just think this comic is failing on every level. Like it's not, the dialogue's not good. The pacing's not good. The direction of the script is not good. It's not featuring the characters well. I think Jeff Lemire is like 100% failing in every possible way, but at least the art kind of was okay. This is Justice League, the Atom Project. And I think what you've heard me say in recent weeks is I think actually all of these books that tie in with Justice League should say Justice League something. Justice League Challengers of the Unknown, Justice League Question All Along the Watchtower, because even Justice League Black Lightning, because they all feel like sub books of Justice Leagues. They tie in so well. I like a lot of elements of this book. It's co-written by Ryan Parrott and John Ridley. The art is by Mike Perkins, who I love, with Adriano Lucas on colors. I'm really enjoying Adriano Lucas's colors on Mike Perkins. I think he's finding a dimensionality on Mike Perkins that a lot of people struggle with. Mike Perkins sometimes draws his faces very flat. He doesn't really draw in a lot of the 3D aspect of it. He does it with shadow. And when colorists go too flat as a color on top of that, it makes all of his characters look like cardboard cutouts. But this page doesn't look like that because Adriano Lucas gets it. But this is a little dry. It's doing this time thing where we're seeing Captain Atom missing his powers, which is a result of DC All In and Absolute Power, and then getting his powers back. But then at some point that we haven't seen, he gets more powers. Now the 2 Atoms are tracking down Captain Atom, but Captain Atom has his own plan. Character-wise, it worked for me. I'm not super gripped by the story. John Ridley has failed so many times for me on so many comic books that my benefit of the doubt for John Ridley is growing ever smaller. So to get through 2 issues of this and to feel like it's that same John Ridley comic I've read where it's like really slow and we're playing with like perspective back and forth, but like there's not really a center to the story. It's wearing me down a little bit, But I do like the art a lot, and I love both of the Atoms and Captain Atom. I really, really like Captain Atom a lot, actually. And this issue did have some good personality stuff, and we got somewhere with his character. For that reason, I'm still trending slightly positive on it, but I'm on the line. And if this doesn't start going somewhere soon, you're going to see me start hulking out about it. I'm going to do a few more, then I'll check in on the chat. Sometimes there's this saying, Chrissy Hind, I think, said it. You have your whole life to write your first album, and then you have 18 months to write your second album. Juvenile, I think Jesus Arana, who does everything in this, colors, letters, everything. I think he had his whole life to plan a first issue, and then we got issues 2 and 3. I love the first issue of this so much. I just don't think the storytelling is there right now in issue 3. But here's what I'll say. I think it's because he's got such big ideas. The world building here is so big, and he's told us so much about it and painted it so large. But now we're in this institution with these kids who, if they don't take their pills, they're going to get superpowers. But we've been told that they're going to die if they don't take their pills. So does it mean that they all go crazy from the superpowers? Because clearly there's many millions of kids in the outside world who didn't get the privilege of going to this institution. Or is it actually the whole outside world superheroes and they're just lying to the kids in the institutions? It feels like there's enough story to tell that big story, and there's enough pages to tell the story inside of the institution, but we're trying to tell both, and we're trying to make it happen all within a single 36-hour period. It's too much. It's too much. And I'm the same. I mean, look at me, how fast I talk on the show, all the segments I want to fit into the show. Like, I get it. I get that need to do all of the things all at once, and I respect it. And it's why I'm enjoying this. And plus, I really like the art, even if I think the story is not super working for me. But I just think maybe if Jesus was not going it all alone and had an editor on this to kind of like say like, hey, let's not give as much about the outside world, or like, let's have like a framing sequence in the outside world every issue to give like deepen the mystery a little. I think it would work so much better. And it's still going to be a fun comic book. It's still really got beautiful art, but just from a pace perspective, this issue really, really lost me. And I was on it so hardcore. I'm still going to read it to the end. And I still think there's really interesting things happening here, but it just feels like it's trying to do way, way too much, all for one person to be doing. And it feels like it could have been like a 100-issue series, and we're trying to get it done in 5. Next, Chaos. So this is the third one that I'm catching up on, but I'm going to set the timer because I'm further on this. I think I'm up to like 15, and this is issue 25. And I have a strong pitch for this. This book is frigging incredible. It feels like a Mike Mignola book, or maybe like Chris Samney doing their own book, and it has a storybook quality to it. But it's about this girl. She's got a metal arm. We learn why. And her little brother, who maybe is meant to be the great savior of the human race, which is pretty sparse at this point, or maybe he's not. Could just be a stupid prophecy. And they're trying to find their way through this world in a world with many factions. There's a whole meadow, a whole what is the word I'm trying? Mesa full of lizard people and fish people, cold-blooded people, but they're the allies. Then there's the mutants, then there's the robots. It's such an interesting world. It's so developed. And this is the great kind of book that it is brutal, but it never totally loses its like kind of YA storybook feeling. So even though there's a little bit of fantasy violence as the characters are fighting, I still feel like I could read it with Kid Crisis and she would really, really love it. And so I just, there hasn't been a bad issue. And he puts it out every month. I don't even think there's been a hiatus. It's so good. And in between every arc, Wes Craig does one of these standalone issues. He's the writer and the artist. And the standalone issues aren't collected in the trades, which does kind of piss me off because I actually had them all in my cart to get for Kid Crisis. I'm loving it so much. And then when I saw that he's not collecting some issues, I get it. You want there to be something for the comic shops. You want to respect single issue readers, but I want to get it for Kid Crisis. So, and then she can't read those issues. But I'll probably be caught up on this first out of all the ones that I keep saying I'm catching up on, because and if it stays as high quality for the next 10 issues for me to get to your issue 25, it is going to be number one with a bullet because I am absolutely obsessed with it. I think it's so high quality. I think it's so amazing. Let's do like 2 or 3 more, then we'll do comments. Little Batman month 1. This is the last issue of this. The art is so cute, but then it's Teen Plus, as we've talked about. So I don't understand who it's for. It's a very cute Batman as the son of Batman having his month 1, but also it's for teens. I don't know. Okay, now we come to Living Hell. This was in my top 10, and it dropped out of my top 10, which doesn't mean that this issue sucked, but I had problems. So this is by Caitlin Yarsky. Her cartooning continues to be peerless. It's amazing. She did the script, art, the colors, and the cover. The letters are by Clayton Cowell. This thing is, and I said I would talk about this later, this is a book where you sold me a bill of goods in the first 2 issues. It's about this Reaper, sort of, who's reaping, but he's reaping other demons, I guess. Quick log line. And there's a human element because it turns out these demons can have human children if they intermarry with humans. And so, and their kids are like half demons. And that's interesting to me. But I got really sold because of this guy who's the demon reaper. And then this issue was very much about the kids. And I get it. I get that. But this is only a 5-issue miniseries. And now that we're pivoting towards the kids, I'm like, oh, I'm only going to have 5 issues for this. I thought I was going to get to enjoy time with this Reaper. I really liked his character. Now this wasn't even mostly about his kid. It was about another kid who's the son of another Reaper, who the Reaper has a relationship with. It was still good, but it took me a little far afield. Also, the scene with this character from the cover, he was really, really foul in the mouth. Like, it's super inappropriate, which is fine. It worked for who the character was in the scene. But I hate when there's a book that could very easily be YA and then not BYA, like bring your own, but like be a YA book. And then there's like one scene where a character curses a lot or makes like a sexually inappropriate comment or something, which we're going to talk about more later in the alphabet. And I get it's Caitlin Yarsky's book. It's her creator-owned book, her vision. So she wanted this guy. He says a lot of inappropriate words all on one page. And that's fine. And I'm not a prude about that. But I I thought I understood what this book was this very winking, somewhat violent, but still like book I could hand to like a 12-year-old. And this issue made me feel like it wasn't, and also it wasn't like the book that I thought I was getting. And it's my own fault. Expectations are a plan for disappointment. Like I do this to myself, but all of those things together left me a little softer on it. It was still a good issue. Still really good comic book. Still absolutely my top 20 comic books of the year. It just pivoted in too many different ways for me to maintain my excitement about what it was doing. And then this book, I really want to read it. It's from Blood Moon, and some of Blood Moon's comics are on Global Comics, but this one is not. I think the difference is if it's somebody who originally released something digital first and then Blood Moon is doing the print version, then it's not on digital comics, because it looks like this was available for sale on the web at some point, and now I can't find it on the web, but it looks really interesting, and I want to read it, but I'm not doing floppies. It's got to be digital. So, and then we get to Missing in the Moon. Let's leave on this one, then we'll do comments, because I really like this. So this book, the first, I got to set the timer, but I'm going to go over. The first is, this is one of my Krisis tells you to check this out books of the week. The first issue was so cool. The moon has been colonized, and it has this whole data page of like where the alternate history happened. And it was so thought out. You could tell this person could write like a 10-novel series about how this happened. But the Soviets originally have it, then the US takes it over. Now it's just like another colony. You'll see this is one of those tropes that I like. So I like that other book, Exit City, last week, that had a very similar trope about a city in the ocean. So now we're like decades into things on the moon. So it's got slums, it's got lowlifes, it's got a police force. And now this daughter of an important person in the moon has been kidnapped, and this gumshoe private eye has to look into it. The first issue is just an incredible detective noir issue. Then with on top of all of the sci-fi stuff, amazing first issue, close to perfect. This second issue layers in all the other stuff, and it really works for me because this issue told me what this book is really going to be. I think if we kept doing the noir detective things for like 3 or 4 issues, and then we pivoted to the larger kind of more societal themes that this issue has, I would have that feeling that I had on Living Hell of like, well, I already made a plan to like this comic book based on something else. But because this pivoted hard to an issue 2, even though it didn't thrill me on the level of issue 1, issue 1 thrilled me a lot, I was like, okay, I get what we're doing. It's not just about crime noir. It's this whole stack of what it means to be in this society. So we're doing the up here thematic sci-fi stuff, we're doing the down here character stuff, and there's a lot of really interesting tension in the middle. That makes an indie book that I love. I highly recommend Missing on the Moon. It's by the charmingly named Corey Crater, and art by Damien Cosero, who I know I've seen on something else before. Colors from Patricio Del Pesce. Letters by the ever-present Hassan Otsman El-Hua. I got to find it to interview with this man on Twitter, so I know how to say his last name. I do not. I like to respect people's name. I don't want to butcher it every week. But yeah, I love this book. This is why I read indie comics. This is why I take a chance on indie comics, because this concept really sings for me. I think the execution is great, and I think even if you don't keep reading it, I would still recommend the first issue, because I think the script for the first issue was so good. All right, I'm going to breathe. And we're going to go back to the comments. Did my bookmark work? Yes. You know what? I'm going to just scan down the comments to figure. I can't say comments today. I'm going to apply some more lip gloss. This is Trixie Mattel lip gloss, by the way. Trixie. Her stuff is all very toyetic and like fun to hold. It comes in these really cute boxes. I never want to throw them away because they're so cute. Okay, there. Now I look glossy again. Let's see what we were doing. Krisis wasn't a fan of Zdarsky's Batman and dropped it. Oh, Krisis. Adam wasn't a fan. I was a fan. Adam wasn't a fan of Krisis' Batman and dropped it at Gotham War. I read Absolute Power tie-in and it was mad. Do you think it would work better now as a whole read? No. If you didn't like it at Gotham, well, no. I don't think if you were into it by Gotham War, it fundamentally changed. That's a whole sentence. Okay. I am from Philly. Why no sports cabal? Because I don't watch the NFL. Oh, see, I was waiting for this question. I think the NFL is such an abusive, negative institution. I think that's changed a lot in the last decade, but I used to be the faithful. I grew up watching the Eagles football in the bar every single weekend. I went to a bar with one of my parents every weekend to watch the Eagles game. When I was in college, I still watched the Eagles game every weekend. It was just one of those things culturally that I did. Even if I wasn't like glued to it, it was still something I did. In 2004, I just found that with everything about the NFL and what they endorsed and the way they treated their players, the way they treated the rest of the media, the way they treated the artists they had for the Super Bowl, things with concussions, things with race, I could no longer support it. And that's when I stopped watching broadcast TV. I actually gave up all broadcast TV because I was like, well, if I'm not going to watch the Eagles, I can just give up. I think the NFL has made strides since then, and I do enjoy it because I'm always going to be that kid who watched the Eagles every Sunday, and it's still exciting to me the Eagles are in the Super Bowl, but I don't need to watch it. I can just consume the culture. Also, the Eagles won the Super Bowl the year that I moved to New Zealand, and I was so homesick. Like, I waited my whole life to see the Eagles in the Super Bowl, and then they won the Super Bowl, and I wasn't there. And I'd waited my whole life for that moment, and I didn't get to appreciate it and appreciate it in Philadelphia. And it was heartbreaking. I wanted to fly back, but I'm like, we've only been here for 6 months. I'm not going to get a plane ticket just to like party in the streets and climb up greased light poles. Okay. Tiger Eyes says, Leave It to Chance was a mid-90s image title about a kid with a pet dragon. Supernatural. Oh, I probably would really like it. Now that you're talking about it, maybe I have it. I don't know. It's sounding more familiar to me now. Moonin says this Frankenstein is a follow-up to the previous Frankenstein New World. Oh, okay. Well, it didn't tell me that either, so I didn't know. Even though Krisis knows all. Krisis doesn't actually know all. Okay. Tiger Eyes. All right, just grab GhostBox. Haven't steered me wrong yet. Oh, that makes me nervous. Like, I want you to listen to me and try things. I tell you to try things. But then sometimes I'm like, no, because the power is scary. Big same, just noted GhostBox, especially since I have it on Prime, so easy to do. Yeah, that's what I'm here for, y'all. GhostBox and Missing on the Moon, I think, are my two like hardcore, please give this a chance. And Living Hell, which is good. I think if you didn't see me on the prior show where I talked about Living Hell 2, I loved Living Hell. Don't let my softness on it from a couple of minutes ago turn you off to it. That's just me saying it's not a 5-star comic, which the first 2 issues were. It was still like a 3.5-star comic, which is still pretty great in my world because I'm stingy with those 3.5 stars. So I hope I communicated that I still love it and it's still a great indie comic and you should still support it. It's just not at that like peakity peak for me. Adam Messenger, Todd stretching out something that can be done in 5 to 10 pages to 50 pages is classic Todd. True. Stephen Patterson's, I find it mental that I can read so many singles and just know where I left off them all. Your brain should be studied by science. The thing is, and I think this is like a neurodivergent thing, I actually don't remember it all. I have to write it in the spreadsheet. And once it's written in the spreadsheet, it has entered my brain. And then I don't even review the spreadsheet before I start the show. It's just in my brain and then I can do it. But if I never wrote it in the spreadsheet, then it's like it didn't exist to me. So I need there to be some kind of like catalog mechanism. And if there is a catalog mechanism, then like all of those things connect. Bunkmaster B says Peter has strong feelings about Jeff Lemire book. Surprise! Ryan Wilson, DC should have put Jeremy Adams or Robert Venditti on GSA. Absolutely. Robert Venditti would be amazing on GSA. And I'm really starting to like Jeremy Adams because I'm really heating up on how much I love that Green Lantern run. Adam Messenger says he likes GSA, but yeah, the most recent issue was an unearned tangent issue. Lance McNair says, Krisis, since I'm a Star Wars fan, huge, but also not a movie person, does that mean I mainly read Star Wars instead of watching movies and shows? No, I mean, I grew up with Star Wars movies, but I think I've transitioned. Somebody will take that out of context. I think I've transitioned to being more of a Star Wars mixed media person. I like that there's TV shows to watch now. I like that the books and the comics are more tightly integrated because back in the day when we only had the movies, it was like, yeah, you could read all the novels and comics, but the movies were never going to acknowledge that because George Lucas didn't give a fuck. But now it's all one big thing. So I feel like, yeah, I can watch Andor, which is one of my favorite shows ever. I think is stunning. So I do sometimes watch screen stuff, but usually way after the fact. I think Andor was already long over and I had ignored it. And people, because I don't really like Rogue One that much. And people were like talking about it. So I started watching it one night where I couldn't go to sleep. And then I like stayed up all night to watch the whole first arc. And then I fell in love. But I like that I can just be a comic book fan and it's getting hot and just engage with Star Wars comic books. And that's a valid way to engage in Star Wars fandom. And that's really fun to me. Always an Instigator says, Peter, do I think there's any way that they'll be able to wrap up Sandman and establish any? Yeah, they supposedly, and I believe this, they were only ever going to do the very dream-oriented material from Sandman. They weren't going to follow all of the flights of fancy it went on. Do I think maybe there could have been a season 3 eventually? Maybe, but it's so expensive that I truly think that they kind of had the early word that they might only get 2 seasons based on the viewership. And so I do think they're going to end it in a good spot. And I think there's a lot of really talented people that work on that show. And I personally didn't like it at all. I did eventually watch it. I hated it, but I want all those talented people to tell the story that they wanted to tell. Max Albleman says Juvie Denial. That's him making a joke about Juvenile. 3, still enjoying it, but it's starting to lose momentum. I don't really feel excitement for what's to come. Same. Reaper says, whew, wasn't into Juvenile, and then you said you liked it, thought about getting back, but now I'm saying going down, don't need to go back. Yeah, the thing is, being a single issue reader, it's up and it's down, I'm hot and I'm cold, I'm yes and I'm no, I'm Katy Perry. So, sometimes I might be really, really hot on a number 1, and then over time I'm like, wait, maybe it wasn't as good as I thought it was. Name changes, missed out on Kaya. Loving Kaya. Loving. At least read the first arc. See if you like it. James Abel, Red Missing on the Moon. Police investigator, freedom fighters, secret conspiracy, missing kids. So much happened. I couldn't put it down. Completely agreed. See, James Abel and I have made up. We're out of couples counseling. We're back together. Kane says expectations are plans for disappointment. That's a golden quote. I actually misquoted it, but it's a thing. It's a thing. Reaper XE puts Cal out every month, as well as doing half of DC all-in special. Yeah, true. Wes Craig, how do you do it? Also, a lot of artists as storytellers don't, how can I say this? They don't have their own distinct verbal flair as writers, even though they have a visual flair. But since they're sometimes working on their own art, their personal flair still comes through. Wes Craig has flair as a writer, which to me is so interesting. Lance McNair loves space, so Missing on the Moon sounds something I think you'll like it, Lance. I really do. Lance says, Krisis, do I have a particular stretch of Claremont's legendary X-Men run that is my favorite? Yes. I like from 167 to 201 the best. It's from the Ashes stuff, early JR. I just think that has all the killer issues. I think Claremont does not know who the characters truly are until 160. That's when he really figures out who Storm and Wolverine are, and it all kind of falls in. And I think after 201, he's meandering. He's pissed off about X Factor. He's also really focused on New Mutants. I think New Mutants actually a lot of that period is the better book. I think there's still a lot of great Claremont issues, but to me, the true alchemy magic of Uncanny X-Men is from 167 to 201. Kane adding Missing on the Moon in my wish list. Love it. Kane, you can also read Missing on the Moon on Global Comics on day one. Awesome. I didn't even realize that. So now I don't have to buy it in the future. Logan Wayne, Paul Smith's run in X-Men, which is the same thing I said. Good job, Logan Wayne. Is so beloved, even though he only did 12 issues. Love it too. Moonin says this Frankenstein is the end of the whole BPRD story. So it makes sense if you've read it all as well. But I'm saying it feels to me like based on this Frankenstein and the other book, The Secret Garden or something it's called, it feels like we're in this whole new world of post Hellboy, and it's not just an epilogue. Like it feels like it's big and it's going to keep happening. And the comics haven't told me otherwise. So maybe this is my expectation leading me to disappointment, but I just thought we were in this whole new world and it was going to be interesting. But maybe it is just all epilogue and tying up plot strings and little bows. I own all of Hellboy. Have I read all of Hellboy? No. But maybe if I catch up on all my other stuff, then this year will be my year. Okay, darlings. Matt, yeah, it's late for Max. He's in the Netherlands. Going to bed so he can get to gym before work tomorrow. I've got to go swimming before work tomorrow, so I understand the struggle is real. Reaper XC are able to read long stretches relatively in peace in my household. They watch TV, you're next to them reading. Super cute, all reading together. No, I actually used to listen to music while I was reading, and now I kind of just like to lock in and read. So I have to, it's different. Sometimes singles, like especially if it's singles that are like lightweight reading, like most Marvel comic books, I can read if there's background stuff going on. But if it's something that I'm like really into or an indie book, I kind of need some space. Always an instigator. If I were to start collecting Krakoa X-Men now with the recent announcements, would I just get the Dawn Omni? Well, I wouldn't get Dugan X-Men because it crosses over the material in Rise and Fall. I would maybe get Rise and Fall because I don't know how they would map Rise and Fall any differently. It's kind of, what else would you do other than maybe put the Ultimate or the online comics in it? So I do think the Rise and Fall book, it's kind of like when they put out, anytime they put out like the ending of a book and then they wind up putting up the run that goes up to that ending with like War of the Realms or whatever. Like I don't know that there's any other map you could do for Rise and Fall, but I personally am not going in on them until I see the mapping and know whether or not that they're going to collect the digital comic books. Okay. Lance loves Rogue One, but the characters would have benefited heavily from Andor treatment. Andor is so good. Eric Skywalker is excited for Andor season 2. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. My favorite Star Wars movie is Andor season 1. It's the final arc of Andor season 1 is my favorite Star Wars movie. But not joking, probably Empire Strikes Back. I would say it's probably my favorite Star. I mean, I love A New Hope, and I actually really like the second prequel. What is that? Attack of the Clones is the second one. I forget off the top of my head, but I like the prequels. Okay, I think we got to get running again. More people want to read Missing on the Moon. No Varg, I feel that reading single issues is that one issue is a hit with some, the second not so much. Yeah, it's up and down. It's mood. We're Katy Perry. We're yes and we're no. Okay, I'm going to read one more. Hold on, I saw one more interesting thing. Yeah, Secret Garden, that other Dark Horse Magnolaverse book, is also at the end of BPRD. It's a new world. But right, my question, I get that. I caught. But my question is, are we just putting a little bow and tying up a few loose ends? Or are we saying we're going to do a whole line of comics in this new world right now? That's what I'm not understanding. Okay, back to the books. Oh my gosh, we're only at M. But that's okay. I think it's going to accelerate from here. I think it is. Okay. This is Namor issue 7 of 8 by Jason Aaron. So the thing is, Jason Aaron's doing this brutality thing. It's this thing that he does, which is why I'm so impressed with him doing the Hope Core on, Absolute Superman, because I think he tends to not do Hope Core. The thing that this issue had for me is we're talking about all these other people who are warring for the supremacy of the under the sea realm, all fighting Namor at once. And just like Aaron on Batman Offworld, it gets into a scope problem for me. He basically tells us on a page, Namor as one person is fighting all 7 of these other armies. But the artist, Paul Davidson, never shows it. So I don't believe it. Then we get into more individual conflicts, and Namor is so interesting and so brutal, but he won't kill people, and he's singing his undersea song, and people start coming to his side. Then I started believing it, but it felt like the conceit of Namor standing as one against these thousands, hundreds, millions, who knows, of soldiers. It felt like the beat was lost because Aaron only told us and we never got showed, and it pissed me off. I think this book is an interesting look at who Namor is and why he is. And I think it's going to be a nice reset button to get him back to a place where he can be used. Because I think he's been torn and pulled in so many directions since Secret Wars. And honestly, since Hickman used him in New Avengers. But I don't think this actual comic book is all that great. Also, I do think it's going to read way better as a binge than as single issues. Because these double-length single issues, some of them don't really ring very well on their own. And then when I would read the next one, I'd be like, oh, I kind of get it. But I ultimately decided I don't like this artist. I think a different artist could be doing more with this. But I do have to say, there was a very nice beat in this where Namor ultimately wins his battle by submission rather than force, which was a nice echo of how this series started in issue number 1. So I thought that was nice. Aaron can still do nice things, even when I don't super love him. Parliament of Rooks, which started out in my top 10, and I got a lot of you to read. There's another book that's on Comixology digitally. This one was okay. I like that it's doing dark fairy tale. It feels very Neil Gaiman. So if you like that vibe and you're missing it already, this could really do it for you. I really, really love this art. So it's all created by Abigail Jill Harding. She did the story and the art. Richard Starkings does the letters and a little bit of a script assist. I like it. It's a dark fairy tale. It's a guy who's turning into a murderous bird, but he's still in love with his princess, who has a little bit more agency than just as your typical princess, but he's consumed with darkness. I think the one place this issue lost me is I just thought he was already on his own path of being consumed by darkness. But then this issue brings out in this external element too. And I was like, oh, like I thought this was already happening. Like I was already on board. But that might have just been that I forgot from issue 2 or I read it too fast. It's still a really cool dark fairy tale. And I think if you like dark fairy tales and you like this black and white pen and ink with just a few little pops of color in it, you will really enjoy this book. I am still really enjoying it. It's just not quite in my top 10, but I'm loving it. Oh, I put something in the wrong order, didn't I? Okay, here is Phoenix number 8. I know you love when I talk about X-Men books. I wish I loved reading X-Men books. This book sucks. And I was really liking it for a few issues. Part of the sucking is this artist that's back I think it's the artist from the first arc, Alessandro Miracolo. Who asked for this dude to come back? The art sucked. Like, we had such a nice, clean, really streamlined look. What is going on here? Everybody looks like a frog, and not like in a cool way. Like what was the guy who drew X Factor number 71? Name's not going to come to me now, but he drew cool. Larry Stroman, cool looking frogs. They just look bad. And then on top of that, this whole issue just like recaps Uncanny X-Men 137. If there's one X-Men issue we all know pretty well, it's Uncanny X-Men 137. Of course, Jean Grey is in her own book because God forbid Stephanie Phillips should give us Jean Grey in an issue of Phoenix. There's barely any of the conflicts with Thanos, because this is all about her relationship with the Phoenix Force, which, surprise, it gets completely wrong. Let's put this book out of its misery. We gave it a try. I got excited for the Thanos stuff, but it's failing month after month. The art looks terrible. There's no good story. And look, I wanted a Phoenix solo book so I could get more of Jean Grey. And it turns out we can't even pay attention to Jean Grey in her own comic book. So let's just call the whole damn thing off and have her go be Cyclops' wife again. Because apparently that's all anybody is good at doing, or all that Tom Brevoort will let them do. Poison Ivy, The Spaces in Between. This was a really unusual issue where it was built as a flip book, so you could read it from front to back or from back to front, following part Poison Ivy's perspective or the perspective of her little side piece HR lady that also is sleeping with Killer Croc and also is kind of sort of making out with Harley. But she's an interesting character. This was really boring. I think G. Willow Wilson maybe only had 2 years worth of story, and I think maybe we're out. Because I was kind of I was into it through issue 24, and then issue 25 kind of was setting up year 3, so I was into that. Issue 26 was pretty good, and then issue 27, 28, 29, 30, I am taking a nap right now. To hype this up so much and to like make such a big deal about how you're going to be able to read it from either side and get to the middle. Like, okay, cool, but like tell a story. This is really just becoming Pamela's inner monologue, the book. We talked to yet another member of the green and the gray. Everybody wanders around. I'm losing focus. What is this book about? Why does it need to exist? What is the conflict? Who is the character? Why did we extend it another year? I don't think Gia Wilson has made a good case for that over the past 4 months. It's pissing me off because I really like this comic book. I really love the art. I really like Ivy having a comic book, but like 4 issues is a long time to feel like we've lost the point of the plot. Speaking of a book that has no point, this is apparently the tough part of the alphabet. At least it wasn't at the beginning this week. Paramount Timeless. I could not have hated this more, but you know what? Maybe you're gonna change my mind in the chat. So this is a version of PowerPoint. This is a version of Power Man that we saw in the Timeless or whatever special from last year that was written by Jackson Lansing and Colin Kelly. And he was in the future. It was so cool. He had taken on all these powers from other heroes. He had the Hulk's gamma radiation. He had the Iron Fist. He had all of these. He'd become like the singular hero. And then he had to fight a Khonshu. It was so cool and interesting as a one shot. So I saw this was coming. I was like, ooh, maybe we're going to explain the backstory of that, or maybe we're going to continue to follow him in that world. That's so interesting. Like that's how Marvel can franchise these characters. Like give us a cool hook in a what if type story. And then if people really respond to it, like expand the universe. But no, we for some reason bring him back to the present day to fly around and be Luke Cage in our universe and have a fight in and then a cosmic heart explodes and something's happened. No, shut up, stop it. Bad dog. What? Just get away. Down, Lansing and Kelly. Shut up. They ruined everything lately. I was so into them for so long, but lately, I don't know who. Also, Bernard Chang's art, not that special, actually. Every time I've seen him recently, he's kind of sucked. This is, here's the thing. Maybe you're more open to new experiences than me, so maybe you would have liked this. Here's what I read when I read this. I read, you can't find a way to keep Luke Cage in his own ongoing comic on Earth, and you're doing all this space stuff, which we have 100 space characters who we could be doing this with. Nova, a bunch of Guardians of the Galaxy, the Sentry, but instead we're bringing back Luke Cage from the future to have a second Luke Cage. No, we don't need that. Maybe you liked it. Tell me why. Okay. Robot Todd. This was so adorable. I forget. I already forgotten the creator name. It's Farrell Dow. So this was only available physical, but I discovered he had been releasing it digitally on his Patreon. That's a valid way to distribute digital. So I went and I subscribed to his Patreon, and that's how I read this issue. It is got a beautiful storybook quality to it. It reminds me, there's a storybook we love in this house called Journey. There's 3 books of it. It's like Journey, Quest, and something else. And it has no words. It's just illustration. And so you can tell the story a little bit differently every time. And it's very evocative. It's really deep. It's really my favorite kids picture book. If you've never seen it, check it out. And we had a habit in our family that we told a different story every time. We would always try to find a slightly different shade of how to tell the story in Journey, and it just became a family tradition. I say all that because I think the art is stunning. The world is whimsical. It's a follow-up of 2 other books that he's written. I don't know if they're illustrated books or comics or whatever. None of the words particularly made any sense, which is fine because the art is so great. And I just wound up taking the words as like suggestions and informing me of who the characters were. And then I kind of just went on a journey with the art, and the art journey was really adorable and I really liked it. I think it needs 80% less words than it's got, honestly. And because if I have to take the words seriously, I might have to say it's not that good because the words really don't make any sense. But I still think it's actually a really interesting narrative, but that might just be the narrative I made up in my head. I don't know. Okay. Next, we have Rocketfellers, which is in my top 10. So I didn't think I was going to do this Ghost Machine stuff because Geoff Johns. I say Geoff. I don't really like him, but I like Peter Tomasi. And then I read the other Peter Tomasi book, and I didn't like that, but I was like, all right, fine, I'll read this. Well, guess what? The first issue is a perfect 5. It is a perfect first issue script. Francis Mountiple's art has never looked that gorgeous. John Callis's colors are amazing. Perfect first issue. It's about a family in the future that in the future they might just be regular people, but they're being chased because they have something. We don't quite know what. That's a major scientific discovery or evolution or something. And so to get away from the people that are chasing them, they make a big sacrifice as a family and they come back to our present day. But in our present day, somebody from the 24th century is pretty much the Fantastic Four. But they don't want to be the Fantastic Four. They just want to low-key live their life and like get a Christmas tree, which is what issue number 2 is about. Again, perfect 5, perfect one-shot issue, heart, funny, gorgeous, loved it. now we're in issue number 3, and this issue is starting to like lean into what the plot is a little bit more. And gorgeous, gorgeous art. But that's fine, because I feel like you gave me 2 issues of concept. You showed me there was an up here concept, and you showed me that I really love all these individual characters in the family. So I didn't need this 3rd issue to be another one-shot story, because I'm willing to like see some stuff get stretched out now. Notice how successful it was to do 2 one-shot stories in the first 2 issues. So I really knew what this title was about. I knew who the characters were. I fell in love. Now we have room to stretch out. That's smart pacing. Everything about this is executed at the highest possible caliber. It's so charming. It's so beautiful. It's so lovable. I'm so intensely interested in the mystery of why they're in the present day. And this lady on the cover from the future, whose character design is amazing, who's chasing them. And I forget if it was in last issue this issue. There's this moment where we get a look at the time stream and the different realities. And it shows us how, in one spread, all of the different ghost machine imprint realities are connected to each other. And you know me, I'm a what? Horror for a shared universe. So even if I'm not really into Redcoat, and I'm not really into the Jeff Johns stuff, and I'm not really into Hyde Street, seeing them all on one page and how they're all part of the same thread, even if they're in different realities from each other, along with Rook Exodus, along with Hornsby and Halo, that to me was just cool. Even if the books are never going to interact, acknowledging that in story got me very, very excited. But that's not why this is in my top 10. It's in my top 10 because it is a perfectly executed comic book. If you like Tomasi and DC, if you liked him in Super Sons, I keep picking this up and not drinking from it. That's this Tomasi. He's back. I think this is way better than the other book for this label. Okay. You know, I'm always saying I don't like Rick Remender. Well, I still will read his number 1s. And since I saw this number 14 coming out this week and I had to write about it for Crushing Krisis, I was like, you know what? I'll read the number 1. The number 1 of this book, which has art from Max Fiumara and colors by Dave McKeag, blew me away. So then I read number 2, and then I read number 3. Then I'd read the first arc. This, I guess I got to start the timer. But don't get too excited, because I will dislike it in the end. Spoilers. This is such an audacious concept from Rick Remender. He builds a world where the gods and the regular people are just a coin flip of difference from each other. They're not different in scale or scope. It's just the gods have systemic power, and they've had it forever. So the gods are enjoying their god stuff, and the humans are suffering, and they have to sacrifice things to the gods. Is it really a sacrifice? Can you, knowing you're going to have to make a sacrifice, does your whole life has to be a sacrifice, or can you live your life to the fullest and then sacrifice? These are interesting questions. Max Fiumara's artwork is some of the most gorgeous, compelling art I've seen on any comic book I've read recently. I could not recommend any more highly the first arc of this that establishes all of that mythology and how it's like Greek mythology, right? That like ultimately Zeus can come down and fuck a swan or whatever. Like the worlds are connected, but people I don't think realize how connected they are. Amazing mythology, top notch, 5 out of 5. Then I guess we're now. So that was my minute to talk about the first arc. Now here's my minute of talking about how we got to here. Then Remender's brutality kicks in. Remender says so many things in this book that crystallize so perfectly his sad, small view of the world, which I think is actually his personal view, because it is so represented across all of his comic books. And I don't like it. And it makes me sad and angry. But he built a world in the first 6 issues with that brutality built into what this world is. So unlike when he writes in the regular world, or unlike his other fantastical worlds where I just am like, no, this makes me unhappy and sad, I don't want to keep reading this. In this world, the utter cynicism, the utter brutality, the utter go drown in a puddle of piss, which is something he said to somebody on Twitter one time, it works in the context of this world. And I'm willing to go along on that brutal journey with him because it's characterized in a way that I identify and understand. I don't love where this is going, and it feels like we're in a circling the drain of a very familiar drain for Rick Remender, because we're telling about a story of what happens if a common person gets power in this corrupt system. The absolute power absolutely corrupts them, absolutely, because Rick Remender does not do Hope Corps. Rick Remender only does Jason Aaron style brutality, and he has no other level the way that Jason Aaron does. But even with that, Fiumara's art is so gorgeous and the world building is so compelling that I find myself still hooked on this book, even though thematically and also the Rick Remender narration makes me want to bang my head against the wall. So I think for those of you who are not as against the brutality of a comic book and like Jason Aaron and like Rick Remender, this may be the best Rick Remender comic book. And look, I did that in just about 2 minutes. Savage Tales. I kind of just skipped this. It's like a Dynamite one shot. And then I went back and I realized that it had Vampirella in it. But this cover, I was like, is it Planet of the Apes? Because that's at Marvel right now. He has a bolt on him, but he's not Flash Gordon. I was like, is it John Carter of Marvel? I just didn't understand what it was. And then I kind of skipped it. And so, my internet is saying that it's kind of crappy right now. Am I getting crappy? Video quality getting bad. Okay. Well, we picked it up right away. Hopefully, I think it just came back. Did I make it come back? Let me see if I can do it just with vibes. I do have some things I could do, but it might briefly interrupt the stream. So I want to wait to see if you tell me if it's looking a little bit better before I start taking measures. I'm just going to sit here and take a breather until y'all tell me how things are going. We're actually getting pretty close to the end of the alphabet. I might bring this in by kickoff. Well, not really. Kickoff is in 14 minutes. Chances of it being brought in by kickoff looking increasingly low. Not really. Okay, here's what we're going to do. I am going to turn off my internet and turn it back on, which often fixes things. But that means I'm going to drop off the stream for about a minute. So we've encountered this before. We know that the screen is going to go black. Talk amongst yourselves. I will give you a topic. What is your favorite comic book running right now that you have yet to hear me talk about? Okay, hopefully I'll be right back. Let's see. Am I still broadcasting? That would be wonderful, because that means I fixed it right away. Am I? No, maybe not. Am I still broadcasting? Can anyone let me know? Am I still on? Okay, signs are pointing to no. All right, so now we're going to restart the internet. Oh, I am still on. Well, how's the quality? Sing it, baby. Am I still here? Is it still decent? Or did when I asked that question, did it suddenly plummet? Still looks lo-fi. So, okay, I think what's happening is that all right, we're going to try that one more time. We're going to try it one more time. Okay, I will be right back. Hang in there. Okay, I'm back. I think the video quality should be good now. So why don't you report on that? Because I just did a speed test and my up speed is pretty high. There we go. Okay. Because what do we do, James Abel? We resolve, we repair, and we recover. Well, thank you for letting me know that the quality was going down. I just got to reshare my screen right now. I know some of you are going to go away for the Super Bowl, and that's fine. You will watch me on replay, I hope, because I'm still talking about a lot of comic books. But let's continue. I guess I haven't done comments for a while, but heaven only knows. I had to reload the screen in order to do that, so I lost my place in the comments. But I'll try to find it. Okay, but I'm just going to keep going because we have so many comics, and I would like to get through a lot of them before you all leave and watch the Super Bowl. So let's keep going. Okay. Scarlet Witch by Steve Orlando. I had a really nice exchange with Steve Orlando on Blue Sky today, and it made me happy because I've been tough on Steve Orlando in the past, but I want to see every comic creator succeed, and seeing him succeed on Scarlet Witch makes me really happy. This had art by Jacopo Camagni with Frank Willem, who was the colorist I was wishing we had on that other issue, and I was complaining that the colors didn't look right because we didn't have Frank Willem. But this artist, Camagni, I don't like as much as the other artist, Tameti, that I really like. It just felt a little Disney to me, a little Disney animation, just how big the eyes are and like how gawky the mouths are and like how big the smiles are. And it's not that I dislike that, but there was this book had a very distinct look and it was moving away from this look because I think Company has been on this book before. And then we came back to it and I didn't love it, but that's very a Crisis thing. The story with Black Cat, super charming, really clever use of Wanda's hex power power versus Black Cat's luck power versus Amaranth's magic nullification power. And it's got that great narration from Steve Orlando. I just think the artist was not quite up to executing Orlando's very clever script, both in words and in layouts of the space, quite as well as could be hoped. Orlando has been hinting that this book is going to end, but that there is definitely more Wanda to come, so stick with it. Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? 132 is DC's longest continuously running single series because this started in 2010. Shazam, okay, this is really complex, and I actually sat down and rehearsed what I was going to write about it, but I didn't. I'm not going to read a script. So this is written by Sina Grace. And it has, I need my glasses back because the credits are so small. And it's got art by Dan McDade. The art was really, really good. Inks by Roberto Poggi and colors by Trish Mulville and Matt Herms. I'm going to restart because who knew it was going to take me that long just to read these tiny names. Okay. Sina Grace wrote Iceman in Resurrection. 2 series, right? 1 series, and then they canceled it and did well and training came back. Sina Grace has this very specific thought that he tends to bring to when he gets to write queer characters, especially cis male queer, gay and bisexual characters. And often it feels like an oppressive viewpoint that never changes, no matter who the character is and who their socioeconomic status is. I bring that up because this one shot, we're going to go back to Josie Campbell writing after this, has John Kent in this book. And John Kent gets de-aged, which is such a fun concept to play with in a one-shot. And we play a couple of interesting beats, like him encountering Damien and Damien having opinions on that, which, again, was really fun. But Sina Grace really, really centers John saying over and over, my boyfriend, I've got to get older and get back to my boyfriend, which is fine. I think even though Shazam is pretty much an all-ages comic, gay characters are for people of all ages. But Sina Grace can't take a moment to just focus on like John's character. It becomes all about how he doesn't want to get older and he doesn't grow up because then he's got to decide if he's moving in with his boyfriend or not. And then it ends with him kissing his boyfriend, which fine. We saw Billy Batson, Shazam, maybe have his first kiss a couple issues ago. Anyway, there's nothing different about gay kissing and straight kissing. It's just kissing, right? But then we end on this beat where we follow John Kent rather than following Shazam. And we follow John Kent back to his place with his boyfriend and they're in bed together watching movies. And they like put a little bit of like a fig leaf on it by saying they built a blanket fort to have a fun night and act like kids and watch movies. But we're still ending this kids comic on these 2 18 to 21-year-old characters in bed with each other. And even I wouldn't care no matter what the gender of those characters were. That's wrong for this Shazam book. Why are we ending on the same kind of beat in Shazam that you would end an issue on in Iceman? They're not the same book. It's not the same queer story you're telling. It's not the same vibe. If you can't downshift into telling a story that fits the vibe of the Shazam book, which by the way, I caught up with this week, is one of my top comics of last year. And so far is one of my top comics of this year. I loved what Mark Waid did with it. And I love what Josie Campbell did with it. If you can't get on that level and you just want to write this John Kent story, that's the same story you write Sina Grace in every comic that has a young gay male character in it, then why did we need you for this one shot? This John Kent being young again thing has so many legs and we just turned it into the same story you always tell. So I've had problems with Sina Grace in the past. I really had a problem with this script. And I want to make really clear, because this is coming from somebody who I thinks of themselves as queer. This is not me saying you can't have queer content and a kid's comic book. Look, it is what behind me. Win. This is a kid's comic book that is extremely, extremely queer. Queer people are just people. Trans rights are human rights. That's not a problem. The problem is, why can you only write the same beat about queerness in every book when you have James Tynion, who can write everything from like super sexy queerness on his adult books to really queerness that like is about just self-discovery and figuring out who you are. James Tynion could have knocked this out of the park. There are other writers that I think could have knocked this out of the park too. I don't think Sina Grace is one of them. I don't think I've ever actually read a good comic by Sina Grace, but it makes hair stuck to my lip gloss in this queer broadcast. But I especially was frustrated with this. And it's not like we like had to watch John Kent and this other character have sex on panel, which would be just as appropriate as watching Mary Marvel and another character have sex on panel. I just felt like it was the same thing he always brought. I don't know if I expressed myself well there, but that's the best I can do. Speaking of queer comics, here's another one. Snot Girl. I don't read this comic. It's by Brandon Lee O'Malley, who you know from Scott Pilgrim. And then Sonic the Hedgehog. I'm not a Sonic the Hedgehog person, but fun anecdote. I was seeing online that there's this statistic of the amount of money that Sonic the Hedgehog earned in all 3 movies is less than what Super Mario Brothers earned in one movie last year, which is wild to me because I have never heard anybody say a single thing about the Super Mario Brothers movie other than Chris Pratt being a ridiculous choice. I see memes from the Sonic movies constantly, nonstop. And I'm not a Sonic person. I don't follow a lot of video game people. I mean, one of my really good friends, Felix, is a Sonic person, but he's not even the one sending me the memes. So it's just so funny to me that like Super Mario Brothers killed. And I get it. It's because Mario's more omnipresent franchise, more kids went to see it. But in terms of the influencers, in terms of the people online talking about stuff, Sonic is winning that war over Mario, at least from the part of the online world that I can see. The Spectacular Spider-Man by Greg Myson. Please, somebody put this title out of its misery, or at least out of my misery. I will say that the art in this issue was incredible. It's by Emilio Leso with colors from Edgar Delgado. I love how they did the spider suits on this page. It's just like, this is the right way. It doesn't look like a geodesic dome. Look how there's little tiny bits of shine on like each one of the panels instead of picking one shiny panel, which makes it look like an Iron Man suit. And then look at all the really cool texture on the Miles Morales suit. It really looks like suit like rippling over this really lithe muscular form. Loved the art in this book, but I don't understand what it's about. Like Greg Weisman is still leaning on this other new character, Elementary, that he introduced in every single issue as another training sequence for her. And this training sequence started out good with the Thing, and then we had Arrow, that was cool, and then we had the Human Torch, but then it gets like smaller and smaller and less significant, and so he's just literally bringing in characters for like one panel, like Squirrel Girl just like rolls through like, hello! And then finally at the end, we get into this fight with the Electros, but I just don't understand, like, what is this book trying to accomplish? Why are we doing a whole arc that's not even an arc, because so many of the stories are one-shotty, that's all training sequences? I don't understand. And the thing is, Weisman writes such good quips. If he would just like figure out what's happening and just do some Spider-Man stories, it would be good. Okay, Spirits of Vengeance. This is bittersweet for me because I think that this book, which I've really been rooting for, we're all rooting for you, by Sabir Pirzada, I think it actually clicked in this issue. Like, I think, and it clicked for me really, I loved issue 2. And I really feel like it all came together. He's telling a story that's about all of the Ghost Riders, the struggles all of the Ghost Riders go through, and how they're being confronted, their spirits of vengeance, by the spirit of violence. And I like, really, really worked for me. But it's the last issue, but it's going to continue into another series, The Spirits of Violence. Somebody asked me the other day, do I think you should read all this if you want to continue? I'm like, no, I think just pick up that next series and see if you like it. This was very up and down. I think some of these artists could not keep up with the idea. And I also think Pirzada just had a lot of ideas all in one big comic book. But if you really, really like the Ghost Riders, the thing that this did well is I think that it made them into like a Ghost Rider family, even the ones other than the two of them that are explicitly related, much like all the DC books now are about like a family of characters under one headline. I think that's the right way to write Ghost Rider in 2025. Also, this saturated color look on this issue worked way, way better. Matthew Miller colored a lot of this. Andrew Dahlhaus colored a lot of the rest of it. And I love Andrew Dahlhaus's colors, but his colors were so wan and like faded that I wasn't like getting Ghost Rider. When I saw this page with Loki and with this super saturated bold colors, I'm like, this is what a Ghost Rider comic book is supposed to look like. So I'm really excited for the next series. This series was up and down. I think issue 2 is a really good issue all on its own. But I'm excited to keep reading. I'm definitely hooked, and I'm happy that it's continuing. Oh boy. Okay. So I've talked about how much I like Star Wars. I don't love the sequel trilogy because I think J.J. Abrams is often a hack, and I really don't like Kylo Ren. So I was very, very skeptical about this book, which follows up The Last Jedi, which is to me the end of canon, because I do not accept that this Last Skywalker, I don't even know what it's called, The Rise of Skywalker, it's not real in my world. This was so good. I should have known, because it's by Charles Soule, who's amazing and writes great Star Wars comic books, and Luke Ross, who I am addicted to, and he's been drawing really good Star Wars comics recently too. But the thing that's great about this is Soule is taking this idea of the legacy of Vader literally. It's not just about Kylo Ren being an edgelord who wants to be like his grandpappy. He's finding out more about Vader, and he's deciding how that makes him feel about himself and the level of control that he both has and attains to. And that is so, so intriguing. It draws very heavily from Charles Soule's writing on Star Wars and what he established for Vader. It draws from what Greg Pak did for Vader, but I don't think you have to have read all that. I think if you want to see Kylo Ren as a despicable bad guy, but rounded out without trying to like soften him, I think that's what we're going to get here. And to me, that is very thrilling. It looked very good. It was very satisfying. I don't don't read the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Saturday Morning Adventures. I do not read Torpedo 1972, but that's a face that you remember on that guy. I did read Two-Face, though, and this actually connects to something I was talking about earlier about Wes Craig and how great Wes Craig was as a writer, writing for himself, but also just stylistically as a writer, because this is written by Christian Ward, who is primarily an artist, but he's writing here. And I think Christian Ward is writing some things that he's not getting across in his script cleanly enough for an artist to execute at the level that Christian Ward would execute for himself. And for that reason, the writing is hanging there a little bit. I didn't really get the point of the story about this little girl who's not actually a little girl who steals the ventriloquist's puppet, and it just didn't really hang together for me until the last couple of pages, where there's a really cool rug pull that makes us re-look at what we've been seeing from Two-Face these past two issues. We think that it's just good Harvey Dent in control, and he's trying to kind of sabotage what's happening in this murderous underworld. But what happens if somebody knows that he's good Harvey Dent and knows that he's doing that, and they are in turn manipulating him? That's interesting. So I'm still on this book's side, but I do think this was the weakest issue so far. And I just didn't get the sense of a lot of the pages and the panels having the impact that I thought Christian Ward seemed to think they would have, if that makes any sense at all. We're so close to the end of the alphabet because we have finally come to Ultimates number 9. This, you don't have to be reading Ultimates. You don't have to be reading Marvel. This is a stellar all-timer one and done issue, as every issue of Ultimates typically is, which is so smart and part of why this title is so great. But this one about Luke Cage is something really, really special, especially with the art and the attention and the art from Chris Allen. I was reading a comment from Chris Allen about how he chose, happens to be black, and the way that he chose to style Luke Cage's hair, the symbolism, the books he has Luke Cage reading, the feedback he gave Dennis Camp on the script. It was clearly very collaborative. This is telling two stories. It's telling stories of a Luke Cage imprisoned, I think even younger than he was originally imprisoned in Marvel's 616. Is it because of the Maker? Or is it because the system is racist? We don't get a definitive answer, and I think that that's fine. And then we see Luke Cage in the present day. Does he have powers? Is he Power Man? Is he just incarcerated as Luke Cage? This book answers that question, but it has so much to say about the carceral state. It has so much to say about the racism of capitalism. It has so much to say that is very, very relevant right now, this week in the world that we live in. And it's just a very good story. It's not just social justice. It is social justice being told through a very interesting lens with really interesting timeline things happening, with a story that you can read, realize what you've read when you've come to the end of it, go back to the beginning of it, read it again, and get something totally different from, which is my favorite thing in a comic book. It was what Poison Ivy was trying to do this week and didn't accomplish. This book did. I could not recommend this any more highly to you, which is the second time I've said this about the series, because the one shot about the alternate history of the Fantastic Four, forgive me, I don't remember what issue, if it was 5 or 6, somebody in the chat might know, I'll say if they tell me, was also that level of good. I think it's time for us to let go of the idea that this is about the Ultimates as a team. It's about the Ultimates as in every superpowered character in the universe, why they have powers or don't have powers, and what they're going to do with those powers in a world that's an unjust world, just about as unjust as our current world is. I think if you let go of that expectation that this is a team book, I'm expecting it to be a team book, and exist in the world where there's a series of semi-connected one-shots about ultimate people with ultimate power, it's the most thoughtful superhero book that is on the stands right now, I think. And this issue was a masterpiece. So, Bunk, whether you're still in the comments or you watch this later, I hope you appreciated that walkthrough. We're almost at the end, so I'm going to finish up and then take your comments. I only missed kickoff a little bit. If we didn't have that bad streaming quality thing, we would have made it. The Walking Dead Deluxe, which is the color version of The Walking Dead. When I Lay My Vengeance Upon Me, the interiors look just like this cover, and it was just too busy and gawky for me, and I couldn't get into it, so I didn't even read issue number 1. Oh, and then I guess Wolverine's probably our last issue of the week. I think I don't think Solid Amen is right for Marvel. I'm really struggling. This issue actually was okay, but again, we're at issue 6. It feels like we've just gotten somewhere, and this is a confrontation and a fight and and a reckoning that it feels like we could have had an issue like 3 or 4 or 5. I don't understand how we got here. Like, even though I liked a lot of those issues, I'm looking back and thinking, what were we doing that it took us to get to here for issue 6? And the last page reveal is going to piss so many people off. I liked it because I like the stupid bullshit that Ahmed is evoking here. I have a feeling it is going to turn off 90% of readers who do not like that character or that reveal. Also, I felt like Martin Coccolo's art, this is a really good page of it. I love Martin Coccolo. I really liked him colored by Brian Valenza, but some of the art was really, really gawky. Like, Coccolo was like having trouble drawing his normal muscularity of figures, and he really had a lot of trouble with Kurt throughout. He doesn't seem to have he hasn't locked in on how he's drawing Nightcrawler, and I feel like it really shows. So I kind of was puzzled by how uneven this was, and I'm also puzzled like how we've just gone to issue 6 and we're like, and now we finally understand what's happening so we can go on. But I felt like I was already there after issue 1 or 2, and then it makes me question if I even did enjoy the issues that got us to here as much. And then seeing how bad Ahmed has failed on Daredevil after I was so hype on it for like the first 6 or 7 issues, and then I slowly came to the realization that it wasn't going anywhere. I kind of feel like, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, am I just a dumb asshole? Because I feel like I'm being fooled twice and this is not going anywhere. I'm rooting for it. I like the story. I like the art. I really like Ahmed's voice for Wolverine. And this bringing kind of a whole team around Wolverine with Nightcrawler, with Lara, with the Wendigo, it really, really worked for me. But Ahmed, I need you to put the pedal to the metal and start taking this somewhere. And it cannot take 6-issue arcs every time, because Daredevil feels like it's a 100-issue arc and we barely scratched the surface of anything interesting at all. And I do not have that kind of patience on Wolverine. Folks, we have done it. We've reached the end, and I would have brought it in just in time for kickoff, if was not for that technical problem. So let's do a couple comments and then wrap this up, even for those of you who don't care about football. So Novarg loved the first issue of Wolverine Revenge, but then the second one didn't have his possibility. Yeah, but that's to me the beauty of comics as a medium. Like, it's not just about writing for trade. You can have one glorious issue in a 6-issue story that sucks. And I love that. I love that you can, the smallest atomized size of a story is an issue. That's fun for me. Lance McNair said, honestly, if the team from Andor could remake Rogue One as a miniseries with fleshed out characters, yes. I think that every episode I watch of Andor. I actually rewatched it recently. It's one of my favorite TV shows, actually. And I don't like a lot of TV. I'm very, very hard on TV, as we've established. I love Andor. Secret Garden is also at the end of BPRDO. We did talk about that. Always an Instigator says, my father-in-law recently mentioned he grew up reading and loving the original Fantastic Four. Can I get him Ryan North's Trace's birthday? Please do. Please do. It's so, so satisfying. I think it's really fun and modern and cheeky, but it pays so much homage to Kirby's work on the title. It's very one and done. You could just get him one issue. There's so many great issues in there. Yes, yes, yes. I think the only Fantastic Four fan that Ryan North's Fantastic Four would not super, super work for is maybe like a Hickman Fantastic Four fan, because it doesn't exist at that big level. And I think that people who want there to be like this big plot beat level of Fantastic Four are going to be frustrated. But I think anybody else who loves Fantastic Four, whether that's Kirby Fantastic Four, Byrne Fantastic Four, Wade Fantastic Four, would absolutely love it. The Rise and Fall Omnibus order window closed for my comic shop. Then this Krakoa was announced. Publishers want comics to pre-order and then screwed us. Yeah, I agree. I actually did have a little bit of a pre-order window that I could have, but I don't trust the mapping yet, so I didn't pre-order it. I guess I'll get it on the aftermarket, or maybe I won't. But I agree. Like, that's why I like how Titan announces so many Conan comics and omnibus at once. Some people are like, oh, they're not hitting the schedule, I don't trust them. Yeah, but you know what? You know what their plan is. So who cares if they hit the schedule? If they said the book's going to come out and the book comes out 3 months late, who cares? The point is, you know that they had a plan through like volume 12. That's what I want from Marvel. I want a plan. That's what I want from DC Finest. I want a plan. And if you were only reading solicits and you hadn't been watching Omar's channel, you wouldn't know Marvel has a plan for the Dawn of X books. Lance McNair, Empire Strikes Back is Lance's favorite as well. Attack of the Clones was my first Star Wars movie. Oh, right, because you're younger than me and I'm as old as the hills. Reaper X, also see Uncanny Volume 6 versus Prelude to Mutant Massacre. Yeah, I think if people would, and that's why I try to get ahead of these things and talk about, like, view the line differently. Look at the line as an event line versus a creator line, or like look at them as differently mapped, because I think people just need certainty. I have this saying that I used to say when I was in customer success. I guess I'm not really in customer success anymore. Certain customers are right. It doesn't mean some customers are right. It means customers who are certain tend to be right. When they understand your brand, what you're offering, what your value proposition is, that customer tends to be right because they know what you're doing. And Marvel's not giving us enough information of certainty, and that creates all this dissent. And sometimes Omar manages to like wring some certainty out of them, but then only the people who watch Omar get that, and Omar can't like go on the record because he's not Marvel's employee. I think if Marvel just gave us more certainty, we would all buy more books. Reaper says, do I need to work late on Mondays to catch up after stream? No, I mostly work with folks in the United States, so it's Sunday for them. So that's why this is on Sunday afternoon. Plus, none of my really good friends tend to stream in this time, so I don't feel like I'm like missing out on seeing or being on their shows or competing with them. So it just worked. I could see a world that I could stream a second day of the week, but that would be hard because then it would be in the middle of my workday, and also I'd be up against like Jess or Omar or Bunk or one of these other folks that I really, really like. Pitty Ma dropping in late. Hello, Pitty Ma. Lance McNair says, seems like just yesterday Neil Gaiman was universally beloved. How fast things change. But here's the thing. Art and artist, man. There are plenty of classical composers that if we had a list of all the shit that they did, we would never listen to that song again. There's plenty of classic rockers. There's plenty of novelists. Some people get better. Stephen King used to be a little bit of a weird dude. And Stephen King turned into a really excellent dude, really excellent progressive leftist dude over time. So people change. I don't know if Gaiman is going to have enough. I don't know if there's enough life left to change enough for Gaiman. That's not what this show is about. But I'm not critically reevaluating his work because of what happened with him. But that's just me. I really like to keep that stuff separate. Unless I'm like, well, unless there's reasons. 5th of Jacking, heading out. It's been awesome. Catching up tomorrow. Got to go pick up the kiddo from work. Another awesome stream. Thank you so much. James Abel on Phoenix 8. I feel like we've been here and we've done this before. Yeah, me too. But is it a cool frog? Tiger Eye says, well, if it's Larry Stroman drawing it, it's a cool frog. Elon saying, don't hold back. Rip into it. Just tear it apart. Ryan Wilson saying, Phillips is just like most modern female writers. Everyone talks the same. The constant lulls around them. Well, I think that's a pretty broad brush to paint with, Ryan. Like, can we say female writers? Like, she writes the same as Kelly Thompson, as G. Willow Wilson, as Magdalene Visaggio, as that doesn't work for me. Turin Grunbach, they do not write lulls around them, nor do I think Phillips especially writes in that tone. I just think Phillips actually writes in a pretty brutal, bloody tone if you read her individual work. So I'm not saying you can't think that way, but I think there's plenty of people who write in that also random comedy, and to say that it's female writers is a very strange position to hold. James Abel says, Poison Ivy 30, great issue. I enjoy the new character Xylon. There was a new character? I guess that was like the gray or whatever. I was bored. Novarg saying, sorry to hit and run. Hey, you were here for a long time, and I appreciate every minute that you could spend with me. Moonin, they're doing both comics in the New World and comics in between. Moonin is apparently our Hellboy export. Shadow of the Golden Crane currently has one issue in the Old World. Robot Hellboy coming soon in the Old World. Then the Secret Garden in the New World. Okay, so my point stands. I feel like Moon and I need to have our own separate conversation. My point stands. If we're gonna keep doing New World comics, can I get like a Hellboy the New World 64-page one shot to like ground me? Maybe I read too much Marvel and DC and I've got brain worms, but I just need something in the middle. Yeah. Okay, great. Amber Patterson, a good stream, very useful. Thank you, Amber Patterson. I really appreciate that. Lance saying, what is this book about? Why does this exist? Sums up how I tend to feel about most modern books on movies from long-running IP. Right, like the stories have to still justify themselves. If you're just writing because you got a check that month from IP, that's how I feel about the Stranger Things comics by Jody Hauser. Jody Hauser puts a comic together just fine. Those Stranger Things comics, they just exist to be Stranger Things comics. Not a one of them ever felt like, wow. Always an instigator, loves Kelly and Lansing, but need Luke Cage to be a political book written by a black person with something to say. Yes, as a white dude, I want to learn and be moved. And also, like, what do we get from Luke Cage being this intergalactic warrior, Sentry, Hulk, Iron Fist merged dude? What do we get from Luke Cage being that character versus it being original black character, or versus it being Bishop, or versus it being Miles Morales, versus it being Night Mask? Like, where is the unique perspective? I felt that in the Timeless one shot, which was cool, but I don't believe that exists now that we've brought him into 616 and we're just using, which is not to say that every black-skinned character needs to have this huge politically motivated, that's goofy too. I'm saying, but Luke Cage does, which I think is the point that you're making. So if you're going to pick Luke Cage, then he better have a perspective. Robot Todd, thank you, is by Farrell DeRimple. But in the book, Adam, and on his Patreon, he just credits himself as Farrell Dow. He doesn't write it out as Darimple. That dude is good people and makes good comics. So I'm always happy to know I'm supporting somebody cool, and especially because I signed up for his Patreon. Rocketfellers 3, the series feels like Fantastic Four meets Johnny Quest. Max told me to read it and he knew it. Well, I told Max to read it. So there, James. I told Max to read it and then Max told you to read it. That's the true trickle-down economics right there. How can I not like Jeff Johns? Well, let me count the ways. Chris Brogan says, that's how I felt about all the books I read by Farrell Temple. The art is amazing and I want to finish it even though I'm not enjoying the story. Well, apparently I'm having the common human experience. Ed Do Lorena, hi Peter. Do you believe the original run of Iron Fist is truly problematic? No. Or are they caught in a place that they don't want to offend anyone? Doctor Strange is the same white savior trope. No, I don't think it's problematic. Look, if you tell good stories defend themselves. I don't think it's a white savior trope necessarily. I think you can view it through that lens, and I think there's a very interesting media critique to be said through that lens. But Iron Fist was just a cool kung fu comic, and in the 70s, somebody from the 70s would have told you that it was actually kind of interesting and empowering to see a kung fu comic led by a white character instead of a character of Asian descent. Maybe, I don't know. I wasn't alive. Well, anyway, but yeah, like I think sometimes when we start to lay what we would say to something as a modern media critique today in the present against a book written in the 50s or 60s or 70s or 80s or 90s or 2000s, like you have to sometimes remember what that book represented as a progressive book at that time and try to appreciate it for that, even if now it's clearly visible to us as white savior. Do I think I would adapt Iron Fist exactly how it was presented in 1974 now in a TV show? No. And I think that's why one of the many reasons the TV show didn't work. But I don't think that means there's anything wrong with the original Iron Fist comics. But what do I know? I'm just this one person with this one opinion. Lance McNair, not crazy about reading overly cynical worldviews either. Yeah, it's a turnoff for me. James, this was when we were having troubles with the video. Penny Mal loves that I'm giving Ghost Machine a chance. Waiting for Rocketfellers to come out as a deluxe hardcover. Surely it will. It's gorgeous. I'm reading them floppy Sir Geiger, which I didn't like, but I might still give another chance. Red Coat, which bored me to tears. Hyde Street, which the concept just wasn't for me. Rook, which I have not read yet. Yeah, I'm going to give them all a chance. I mean, I love shared universe. And even if the universe is not like totally shared, intertwined with itself, if it's just kind of like the hint of sharing and them having a little existing in the same multiverse structure, that is still fun to me. And I still will read it. Then we have all of the video quality stuff. Lance McNair, Black Canary by Tom Crane, art by Ryan Sook, which I know you aren't going to talk about. Well, it didn't come out this week. It came out last week. Okay. I'm back. Resolve, repair, recover, which is what we are saying. Do I prefer Adams, Namor, and Zdarsky's Defenders? Zdarsky Defenders was my top comic book of 2019. Zdarsky Defenders, everybody should go and read. Actually, Invaders. It's Invaders. We keep saying it's Defenders on the stream, but it was actually Invaders. And that was my top comic. Oh, there was also a Defenders, but that was Al Ewing, and I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about Invaders. No, but I think Invaders, that was part of this. Namor's been on a long arc since 2012, and I think to get him back to the point where we can just use him as Namor, Aaron tried to do it in his Avengers, and it was some of the better issues of Avengers that had Namor, but I don't think it quite worked. And so I think Aaron is doing a good thing, and he kind of factory resetting him, and he's taking him back to a place where everybody can use him again. Only want to see Kendrick and go, well, wow, what a week to be seeing Kendrick and go after what happened on the Grammys last week. Steve Orlando does seem like a really nice person. And hey, I can think somebody's a nice person and hate their comic books. I can think somebody's a bad person and love their comic books. I contain multitudes. I'm No Jedi says, will Sabretooth War also be included? Well, the thing is, Sabretooth War happens entirely between the end of X-Force and the beginning of Fall of the House of X. It's the last thing that happens before Fall of the House of X. So if they do interpolate all the Sabretooth War Omni stuff into a line-wide series of Omnis, which I think they could, it's going to be in the whatever like Fall of X volume 2 or 3 is. And I think it's fine. It's 10 issues that read all in a row. It could very easily stand there on its own. It doesn't cross over anything. But even though it's coming out alongside Fall of the House of X, it all happened beforehand. That said, I do think the way they're presenting it in that Sabretooth War Omnibus is the best way to read it, because the two Sabretooth Exiles books happen in pretty quick succession to each other, and they roll directly into Sabretooth War. That's a very good reading experience, which will not be duplicated in a Krakoa line-wide omnibus setting. So I think if you just went Sabretooth War, I would get the Sabretooth War. It was a little not my favorite thing, but people really, really liked the Sabretooth series. I didn't, but people did. So that might be a good buy. How would I rank She-Hulk solo runs? Wow. Absolutely loved Rainbow Rowell. Byrne, no. Rowell, David, Byrne, Slott. Soul I sometimes didn't like the art, which was a coloring thing for me. So it's hard for me to separate that. I don't really like. I felt Slott had a very surface level take on her that was more about jokes, and I didn't think it was as good for her character. So Slott kind of low. I like the original Savage run, but it's like not anything special, but I still really like it. And then there was also that run in the middle by Mariko Tamaki, which I also didn't like the first half, like the second half. But yeah, I would say top for me, Rowell's run was one of my top comics of last year. Absolutely wonderful, beautiful. Loved it. But I love She-Hulk, so I'm an easy mark. Lance Minier, representation is great, but characters feel like actual people, not be solely based around one trait. Thank you. Said it much more succinctly than I was able to say it. You'd think that Shazam comic would end with Shazam. Right, that was my thing. Like, it just felt like the gaze of the story, the gaze of the story. Felt like the gaze of the story was like not where I thought it needed to be. Richard Fearing, getting in here late, hope being Kid Crisis are well. We are well. Thank you so much for saying that, Richard Fearing. Sanic. I don't know what that was in regards to. Wow, we're just reacting to Scenic Grace stuff. Scenic Grace rates like a grandma reeling to try and make sure you're hip and accepting. Yeah, I remember this issue where this was again my thing where he like writes all white gays the same, where it was like Iceman is gay now, so he's in line for sneakers. I'm like, that's not why are we doing that? Lash G says, I haven't read March, but Nathan Powell's Swallow Me Whole is one of the best graphic novels I've read. That will go on my list when I do my reread of all the comments. Crisis on scale of 1 to 5. How did I rate Jerry Dugan's run on X-Men? 3. He had certain characters he was really good with. I think there were certain arcs that really clicked. The opening arc was really good. I think he really used sync really well. And then sometimes I was like, what is even happening here? What is the point? I think Jerry Dugan is one of those people that he needs to have a really good perspective on something. And when he doesn't, he is very good at just churning out a monthly issue that reads fast and looks great because he gets a great artist. But there's no there. I think Joshua Williamson is the same. I don't dislike Jerry Dugan. I think Jerry Dugan is a fantastic writer, and I enjoy him a lot of the time. I like his indie stuff too. But when he just gets in that rhythm where he's just vomiting out a script every month, I do think he can get a little bit marginal. I felt like that at a lot of points in Marauders where it looked great and was fun, but then if you page back through the issue, you're like, did anything happen? And that's kind of how I feel on his X-Men. I don't think it's very satisfying to read on its own. I'm sorry, my nose is so itchy. I don't, because my hair keeps tickling it. I don't think it's very satisfying to read on its own, honestly. They announced Spirits of Violence was canceled and haven't announced a replacement for it. Oh, well, that's a bummer because that issue was like, wait for Spirits of Violence. So, but I guess that series didn't do well and they canceled in advance. Well, erase all that excited stuff I said. Edwin Billiot says, I agree. As a gay man, that Scenic Grace writes the same character beats Reese. Thank you. That is very, very validating for me to hear for each person, despite that they're individuals and have different struggles. Thank you. I'm just one person and I'm one person with my own complex stack of intersectionality, and so I sometimes don't know if I should even open my mouth about this thing, and I had a really hard time articulating the Scenic Grace thing without me feel like I was downward punching about like a gay character being in a kid's book, which again, look at what is behind me right here, which I absolutely read with Kids Crisis. So I'm really happy that you understood and articulated so well what I was stuck on. Kane says, for me, the Spectacular Spider-Man is just a fun team up. But it's not even a fun team up. They're not even teamed up. It's just about this other character all the time, but I'm happy you like it. I'm not expecting deep plots. I'm reminded of the brotherly friendship. I like their brotherly friendship. Give me more of issue 1. I want them to be like big brother, little brother. I crave that. I would buy 2 issues that a month. That's all I want. Kane, by the way, did you like that Chasm series from last year? We talked about it on Near Mint on last Thursday, and nobody said anything about it. And I had already talked so much about the Bloodhunters series that came right before it that I didn't want to talk again. So no, I don't know how anybody liked it. You're Kane. You are Kane. So I'm very interested in what you thought about it. Renzo does not like Kylo Ren. Me neither. But I still found that issue really, really interesting. Ryan Wilson, it's like every time we see John Kent Superboy, you have to see him do something we know he's gay. Well, I usually buy. I find it kind of dehumanizing that I think that all we can focus on is his sexuality. That's kind of where I am on it. Like, I think Tom Taylor did well that he still had him doing heroic stuff. And my fear now is that now he doesn't have his own book and he's just periodically appearing in Superman. He's starting to be like go-to gay character. And I think that happens Because I mean, it's the same thing we do with any character that has an intersectionality around their identity and their stack of identity traits, that they're great when they're on their own, but when they start getting brought in as a guest star, they get brought in as that gay guest star, that black guest star, that woman guest star, and it becomes hard to use them with nuance. And I really have grown to love John Kent, even though I still blame Bendis for aging him up, and I hated that, but I have grown to love what they've done with him since then. And so I want him to be used well, and I want him to be used more than our token young bi, look how cool it is that Superman's son is bi character, which I think is a good part of his character, but he's got so much more to him, which kind of sort of was scratched at by the Sin and Grace story, but I still felt it tokenized him. I learned today that indie pop darling Grace E. Abrams is JJ's daughter. Nepotism. Nepo baby. Lance J. McNair says, I love Kylo Ren as a character, and he was one of the sequel's saving graces to me. Well, then you are also going to love this comic book. I think everybody's going to love this comic book. I think Charles Soules is great. I try not to do things where you're adding each other, because that's your own conversation. Breath of Lithium, I wish they stopped making so many characters gay, and I'm buying. I think Crazy Crush is great, as hot as AF. Flattery, as we know, will get you everywhere. There, I said it. Yeah, well, no, I'll take more gay characters. I'll take more. Yeah, I like that John is bi. I think we're too late in the stream for this. I have a lot of friends with kids who are a little bit older than Kid Crisis, and the thing that really is heartening to me is they're all teenagers. Their view of sexuality is so much less fixed. Like, one of them dated a girl, and that she identified as a girl and dated a girl, and her parents are like, are you a lesbian? And they're like, why are you asking me that? I dated a girl, back off. And then dated a boy, and they're like, are you bi? And she was like, back off. And I love that. I love that for our kids today. And I want to see more of that representation in comic books. James Abel, Ultimates 9. What an amazing issue. The way they used the panel to tell Luke Cage story from page to page. Other comics can take a lesson for this. How far behind am I on comics right now? Oh, 20 minutes. Great. Guess what? We're going to keep going. If you're still watching, you're still watching. If you're watching later, you're watching later. So if you're watching, you're watching. So I should keep doing it. Lance McNair says, yeah, let his sexuality play into it, but it doesn't have to be John's defining trait. Same as character being black, because other than that, human beings have the same complexity. Love it. Ryan Wilson, J.J. Abrams says, go away heat from me. I don't know what that means. I'm not hip enough. Kane says, I recently picked up Ultimates Volume 1 trade and so excited to read. For me, the whole new Ultimates line has just been amazing. I love people having that excitement, and Ultimates is worth every second of that excitement. Chris Brogan, I might have to check this out. I really like Luke Cage's original run. Yeah, if you have any affection for Luke Cage, buy Ultimates number 9 for sure, for sure, for sure. J.J. Abrams' reliance on mystery boxes and nostalgia is so irritating. It worked with Force Awakens, but ironically, it's what undid The Rise of Skywalker. Lance, I'm finding I vibe with very, very strongly. Keith saying Ultimates is cooking. Camp is so good. I know cooking means. I am youthful enough to know that. Camp is so good. Love how every issue is essentially standalone. It really distills characters. And also, Keith, it's becoming the standard I hold all other comics to. Like, I want all other comics to have that standalone punch. That I'm like, if Ultimates can do it, why can't you all do it? Okay. Let's see. Kane saying I peaked at the trade. That's how I know. Wolverine 6. It only took 6 issues for this run to improve. It's not great, but it's better than what it was. Well, I'm glad you're having patience. I'm getting worn out. Adam Messenger, I thought about checking out Wolverine, but then I saw that last page reveal and probably never check out that run yet. Yeah, the last page reveal is going to be a big turnoff. I mean, I would do the same thing because I'm a weirdo, but I do think it's going to turn people away from it, honestly. Pity Ma says, Crisis, get DC to release the Weird Tales omnibus, War Western. Hey, show up for the poll. It'll be on the poll if I do my job right. Lance McNair says, just reserve North's F4 trades for my local library. Love that. Support your local libraries. Get a local library card. It matters, especially right now. Libraries matter. Show them that they have patrons and that patrons want them. Lance McNair, I'm the same way. It's separating art from artists, although J.K. Rowling is making it harder to do so, but I still love Harry Potter. Very similar feelings. Hey, Tim Burnham, my buddy, who I think I'm going to be in a stream with later this month. Late comment, but I've been tuned in the entire stream, just busy with other things and couldn't really participate. Great discussions. Always love hearing your opinions. I would love to know what you think about the current Daredevil run, my friend. All right, I think we're almost done. Crosby Hoffman, speaking of Dugan, is falling in love in the past. The Halloween good. I think it was very good. But it was a little in that brutality place for me where I read a few issues and I'm like, I'm so hot right now. I'm sorry. Where I read a few issues and I was like, okay, I get it. It's about this old Western gun guy and this samurai woman, and they both die and they're in limbo. But it turns out that limbo has all these rules and you've got to keep staying in limbo. But what if you don't want to stay in limbo and you want to go down through hell to get back through the top of heaven, like in a Dante's Inferno kind of way? So if any of that sounds cool to you, Dugan is doing a very, very, very good job in it. It just was not my personal vibe, But I actually think it's a really high quality comic book. All right, Kane has, we're almost up to present. Kane has not read Chasm, so can't say. Kind of ignoring 616 Spider-Man's in favor of Ultimate Spider-Man, which is a valid life choice. Logan Wayne, since we're on the topic, how do you feel about the Pride Black Latino anthology books? Well, here's the thing. I'm not any of those things. Well, I guess I'm a little bit Pride, but I'm not Black and Latino. My family is a multiracial family, not me personally, but my family unit is. So I do have an opinion, but it's not my intersectionality to own. I just wish they weren't so trivial. Like, I feel like sometimes the books just feel like an audition book, and like, that's great, and give people an audition, but also like make it feel substantial, make it feel like everybody is got their money's worth. Because if it just feels too insubstantial and auditioning for a bunch of people we've never heard of before, then people just think it's like like ghettoizing those books. And every time there's one of those specials, it's like, oh, it's one of those. So I just think they've got to be really good. You need the highest caliber of stories and the highest caliber of interesting stories that demanded to be told. Not just like, oh, hey, we have space for a book about, I think one of them in a year or two ago had Stephanie Williams writing about Monica Lembo in a grocery store. Like that, we don't need that. That didn't need to exist. It's nice that it happened, and I'm happy for Stephanie Williams. Her agent is a friend of mine, Eric Smith. But that story didn't need to exist. And anybody buying that book to be like, wow, I want to read some cool Black voices writing Black characters. I don't think any of them read that story of her in the grocery store and were like, damn, I'm going to buy every story by this character and this author now. So I just want them to be good. Midnight there, gotta go, Badger Stump. Thank you for hanging out so long. Tim Burnham saying, looking forward to streaming, which I think we're going to get to do later this month. Oh, it's far too late in the stream to delve into Daredevil, but we will have to discuss for sure. And I've made it. Kevin Conroy's piece in the Pride anthology was wonderful. What a great note to end on. I completely agree. Well, folks, I think I'm going to play a song. I don't know. I will, perhaps. So look, this has been a lot of fun. This is the first week that I'm totally caught up, which I know sounds weird. Like, haven't I been caught up this whole time? But for every one of these, I've had to do so much reading to read these issues because I wasn't necessarily up to date on the whole series. This is the first week where I actually didn't have any catch-up reading except for those 3 series that I really need to catch up on. And I did start catching up on them, but I also decided like I'm not going to just binge them. So it was just a much easier week. And if you remember, I was in such a mood last week, and you guys lifted my mood so much. Like I just felt so much better after being with you and talking to you. So that was great. I should be back next week, same time. I don't think there's any reason not to. I don't think I have any. Oh, I'm on Omnidog this week on our Jammin' on Comics Tuesdays with Freddie and Omnidog. I think this week is going to have a Valentine's Day theme. I don't know. Freddie and Omnidog were talking about it. So stop by. I believe that is going to be really much earlier this week. I think it's at 6 o'clock now, or maybe 7 on Omnidog's Vault on Tuesday. So just stop by. Later this month, we're going to have Evergreen Daredevil on Your Mint Condition, but we're still locking down the date. And otherwise, I think I'm just going to see you next Monday. I think that's it for me right now. I'm going to play a song. It's funny. We were talking about all this identity stuff and intersectionality. This is a song I wrote, and at the time, I just liked it because it was a fun song to play. And then over time, I discovered it had a lot of really interesting things to say about me, to me, that I didn't even realize at the time. So this is called Love Me, Love Me Not. It's been so fun seeing you and playing for you and talking to you and being in conversation with all of your comics and comments. I can't say comments today. All I can say is comics. Be well, be good out in the world. Trans lives matter. Black lives matter. Trans rights are human rights. Resist. Maybe we need to add resist. It's repair. What is it? Repair, recover, resist, maybe. Maybe we have to add another R. Resolve. I don't know. It's been a long time talking. I'm Krisis, and this is Love Me, Love Me Not. I took my best shot at being what I'm not. Did it better than most. Didn't like it a lot. Now I'm back to square one. It's one and the same. Looking in the mirror, playing the same old game. Do I love me not? Do I not love me? Do I love me not? Do I not love me? Get so introspective that I'm making up layers that weren't there before, so I can stay insulated from the petty little statements that get people through the day. Some think they're better than me, but they're not good enough. So I keep my mouth shut and my hands in my myself and I try to make it through unscathed. Wondering, do you love me, love me not? Do I not love me? Do you love me, love me not? Do I not love me? Do you love me, love me not? Do I not love me? Do you love me, love me not? Do I not love me? Maybe I need some new age guru to get onto YouTube and actualize me. Maybe I need a grapefruit diet and detox tea. So when do you think I am the realist? Me? Maybe it's 3 a.m. Maybe I'm fast asleep. Maybe I'm a stranger. I've lived my life without meeting. All these glimpses in the mirror, all my glances are so fleeting. Do you love me, love me not? Do I not love me? Do you love me, love me not? Do I not love me? Do you love me, love me not? Do I not love me? Do you love me, love me not? Do I not love me? Do you love me, love me not? Do I not love me? Do you love me, love me not? Do I not love me? Do I? Do I? Do I? Do not love me? I'm Krisis. That was Love Me, Love Me Not. This is Crushing Krisis. You're awesome. Thank you so much for being here. I will see you next week for Crushing Comics Live.